Chapter 1049. Yi Chen knew that the Sun Clan that Sun Chang belonged to was a hidden force, but he didn't know the exact location of the Sun Clan. He also didn't know who the other members of the Sun Clan other than Sun Chang were, what they were called, and what they looked like. Otherwise, why would Yi Chen bother with this New Yin Huang alliance leader? He would have killed him long ago. As for what the New Yin Huang alliance leader was talking about, Yi Chen only knew that they were trying to flatter him so that he could destroy the devil race in the real world. This would allow them to develop and catch up to Yi Chen. Apart from this, Yi Chen didn't know if the hidden powers had any other schemes. This was also the reason why Yi Chen didn't kill the New Yin Huang alliance leader. The moment Yi Chen's words landed, the New Yin Huang alliance leader felt a chill run down his spine as he hurriedly shouted. "You have beached the Sun Clan is 2,300 miles south of New Yin Huang City." When Yi Chen heard this, he focused his mind, and his spiritual perception instantly locked onto a player-built city, Divine Dragon City, about 2,300 leagues south of New Yin Huang City. Seeing the words Divine Dragon hanging on the city gate, Yi Chen curled his lips in disdain. He really knew how to blow his own trumpet. Thinking about this, Yi Chen's consciousness locked onto all the people in Divine Dragon City who weren't online. Naturally, Yi Chen did this to determine whether this Divine Dragon City was the lair of the Sun Clan through the conversations of the people in Divine Dragon City. Yi Chen wouldn't believe that Divine Dragon City was the base of the Sun Clan just because of a sentence from the New Yin Huang alliance leader. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yi Chen's eyes widened. That's right, that was indeed the base of the Sun Clan. From the conversations of the people in Divine Dragon City and the City Lord's residence, Yi Chen heard the words Big Brother Chang, First Young Master, Sun Clan, and so on. With just these, he could more or less confirm that Divine Dragon City was the headquarters of the Sun Clan. In addition, the Divine Dragon City City Lord, or rather the leader of the Sun Clan, who was also Sun Chang's father, asked that boss isn't back yet, and a young lady replied that New Yin Huang City isn't far from here, so he should be back soon. Naturally, Yi Chen didn't have any more doubts. In a while, he would get rid of the Sun Clan. Thinking about this, Yi Chen looked at the New Yin Huang alliance leader and said, "Continue. You have beached. Lord, I will tell you everything I know. I only beg you to let me off and give me a way out." When the New Yin Huang alliance leader heard that, he gulped down his saliva and knelt down to Yi Chen with a begging expression. When Yi Chen heard this, he laughed coldly and said, "From the moment you started plotting against me, you were already a dead man." When the New Yin Huang alliance leader heard this, his originally pale face turned even paler. Then his eyes widened and his body started to tremble violently. In the next second, the New Yin Huang alliance leader opened his mouth and fell to the ground with a pong and fainted. Did he want to die? Definitely not. Otherwise, he wouldn't have begged for mercy. However, Yi Chen's words clearly told him one thing. That was, Yi Chen wouldn't let him off. Otherwise, why would Yi Chen say such words? Wasn't it obvious that no matter how hard he begged, Yi Chen would still kill him in the end? It was because the New Yin Huang alliance leader heard the killing intent in Yi Chen's words that he fainted from fright. When Yi Chen saw this, he frowned and waved his right hand. "Pa!" A sound was heard. A bloody red palm print appeared on the face of the New Yin Huang alliance leader who had just fainted. Then, his face swelled up at a visible rate. Yi Chen naturally didn't use any strength. If not, this New Yin Huang alliance leader's head would have exploded. Following Yi Chen's slap, the New Yin Huang alliance leader who had just fainted slowly opened his eyes. After being stunned for a short while, the New Yin Huang alliance leader's eyes popped out as he looked at Yi Chen and screamed in a shrill voice, "Brother Yi, you have beached. I have never schemed against you. Really, I can swear. Cut the crap. Tell me, those few families you mentioned, who are they and what are they planning?" When Yi Chen heard this, he squinted his eyes and hollered. The New Yin Huang alliance leader had never schemed against Yi Chen. He was just trying to trick a kid. Naturally, Yi Chen wouldn't be tricked. When the New Yin Huang alliance leader heard Yi Chen's words, he stood rooted to the ground. Yi Chen's words left no room for negotiation. What did this mean? No matter what he said, he was still going to die. Thinking about this ending, how could the new Yanhuang Alliance leader remain calm? After being stunned for a short while, the eyes of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader were filled with regret and hatred. Since I'm going to die, why should I tell you? Yi Chun, you can continue to be bored. When their plan is completed, it will be your time to die. The face of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader became more and more savage as he spoke. This was an explosion before death, and it was also a cry in despair. There was unwillingness, anger, and deep hatred. When Yi Chen heard this, he looked at the Yanhuang Alliance leader, whose face was filled with madness, and said, "That's right, idiot." The new Yanhuang Alliance leader's appearance was the same for anyone. He wouldn't reveal the secret. If it was someone else, they could only torture him. Apart from that, there was no other way. As for Yi Chun, torture was not the only way to force him to confess. More accurately, Yi Chun wanted to know something. Apart from torture, there was another way, and that was to search his soul. Although doing so would cause Yi Chun to use up some heaven and earth fate, the amount of heaven and earth fate that Yi Chun had used up was only 1/100,000 of the heaven and earth fate that he had obtained from Xinluo. Although this bit of consumption was a bit of a pity for Yi Chun, it didn't matter. After all, the providence that Yi Chun obtained when he went overseas to fight was an additional benefit for him when he stayed in the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. Moreover, these gains were only a part of the world war that had already begun. There would be even more heaven and earth fate in the future. Therefore, Yi Chun didn't care about this bit of consumption at all. Of course, it was better not to consume it. However, Yi Chun didn't want to waste time because of this. After all, what Yi Chun lacked the most now was time. Soul Search. With a thought, Yi Chun used the Soul Search secret technique. In that instant, Yi Chun's mountain-like divine sense charged into the mind of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader. In the blink of an eye, he pulled out the soul of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader from the depths of his mind. Then, he forcefully searched through the memories of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader. After a cup of tea's time, Yi Chun retracted his divine sense and opened his eyes wide. I was wondering why Empress Hari, who was supposed to appear in the wilderness, appeared in the real world. So it was because of those few hidden powers. Luckily, there was a deviation in the summoning process. Otherwise, my Nan will be controlled by these F***king bastards. In the memories of the new Yanhuang Alliance leader, the few hidden powers found a way to use the summoning altar in the hands of the Devil Race players. After that, the few hidden powers discussed and worked together to snatch a summoning altar from the hands of the Devil Race players. As for the goal, it was to summon experts from the higher world to deal with Yi Chun. Originally, the summoning was a success. However, halfway through the summoning process, the Devil Race players suddenly arrived and fought with the hidden powers. In the end, the summoning ritual lost its leader. Just like that, the beings summoned to the lower world, because of the sudden destruction of the summoning altar, automatically removed the contract that the summoning altar placed on them. However, the summoning process had already reached the end and did not stop because of that. In the end, the beings summoned to the lower world not only did not have a contract, but they also randomly appeared somewhere on Earth. This was the reason why Yi Chun believed that Empress Hari had been summoned to the lower world by the hidden powers and heaved a sigh of relief. Because on Earth, there was only one Empress Hari who could be considered a native of the wilderness, and he was met by Yi Chun. Although Nana appeared on Earth because of these hidden powers, their original intention was to ambush him. Fortunately, he was lucky. Otherwise, Nana would have either been killed or controlled. The beings summoned by the summoning altar had a contractual relationship with the summoner. If the summoned being was strong, then the summoner would treat it nicely and do their best to serve it. Then, they would ask the summoned being to the lower world to do something for them. If the summoned being was not strong, then the summoner would enslave it. This was the result of the restriction of the summoning altar's summoning law, coupled with the ways of the world of the players in the real world. On the other hand, When it came to Empress Hari and Nana, the result would be the same as what Yichen imagined. In other words, Empress Hari and Nana, who were summoned to the lower world, would either be killed or controlled. This was because the 3-year-old Empress Hari and Nana were completely ordinary. Although she was a special person, it was also a fact that she had not awakened and did not have the slightest strength. The hidden powers who noticed this would inevitably fly into a rage out of humiliation and vent their anger on Nana. Of course, this was assuming that only the hidden powers succeeded in summoning without any deviation. Only then would such a situation occur. In fact, not only did the summoning of the hidden powers deviate, but it also allowed Yi-chun to encounter Empress Hari. This was why Yi-chun thought that he was lucky. He had dealt with these cheese in one wave, so that they would not snatch the summoning altar from the demon players and cause trouble for him. Chapter 1050. At the thought of this, Yi-chun squinted his eyes and slapped the air with his right hand. With a pung, the body of the New Yin Huang Alliance leader exploded. At this moment, countless pieces of flesh mixed with blood-stained broken bones sputtered out, splattering everywhere. At this moment, 6 men wearing profound great armor suits arrived at the front yard of the City Lord's mansion. Before they even entered the main hall, they saw Yi-chun in the middle of the hall and the floor of the hall, which was covered in pieces of flesh. The 6 of them were stunned. They looked at each other, then bowed to Yi-chun and said, "Brother Yi, I'm sorry. Greetings, young master son." When Yi-chun heard this, he turned around and looked at the 6 of them. In that instant, the 6 of them who had just shouted, "Young master son," froze. Then they opened their eyes wide. Yi Yu of Gojoseon. Yi-chun was the strongest player in the East, the #1 player in the human race, and the #1 player on Earth. All information related to Yi-chun, including Yi-chun's appearance, was known by everyone. Hence, it was not strange that the 6 of them could tell the identity of Yi-chun. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi-chun was synonymous with death and fear. This was a fact that all players knew. As long as Yi-chun left Reincarnation City or Reincarnation Immortal City, either players or natives would die. No matter which side it was, the result would be the same. That was death. And now, Yi-chun had appeared in New Yinhuang City. What did this mean? Very simple. Yi-chun was going to start a massacre in New Yinhuang City. This point could be easily seen from the ground covered in pieces of flesh in the main hall of the city lord's residence. In truth, the 6 of them could not help but be afraid. This was because they had indeed plotted against Yi-chun. More accurately, they had also participated in the flattering of Yi-chun. As for their goal, it was very simple. They wanted Yi-chun to be pleased with their flattery and then act to deal with the demons in the real world. Then, the plan of the hidden power could be carried out. This was not a random judgment by Yi-chun. It was the truth. It should be known that if the 6 of them were not aware of what had happened, or had not even participated in it, it was impossible for them to not be alarmed and nervous when they saw that Yi-chun was alone in the city lord residence, and there were pieces of flesh and blood on the ground. Instead, they even addressed Yi-chun as young master's son. What this meant was that the 6 of them knew that the Sun Clan behind the New Yin Huang Alliance, and they knew that they were part of the Sun Clan plotting against Yi-chun. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to be so nervous and afraid just from seeing Yi-chun. It was true that Yi-chun was cruel and merciless, but Yi-chun would never kill indiscriminately. This was a fact that all the players knew. It was impossible for them not to know. After the 6 of them shouted nervously, they could not help but swallow their saliva. Gulp, gulp. When Yi-chun saw this, he laughed coldly. He raised his right hand and pointed at the air. Seeing Yi-chun's actions, the pupils of the 6 of them constricted. In that instant, the thought of Yi-chun is going to act appeared in their minds. However, before they could open their mouths, a thunderous roar sounded out. Kabaka! Kabaka! In that instant, 6 arm-thick blue lightning bolts appeared out of nowhere. They pierced through the night sky and struck the 6 of them who wanted to explain to Yi-chun. Boom, boom, boom. 6 sounds of bodies exploding rang out, following which the 6 New Yin Huang alliance leaders who came to the manor all exploded. Charred flesh with traces of blood flew into the air. None of the heads of the New Yin Huang alliance could be left alive. Kill them all. The New Yin Huang alliance was a new power supported by the Sun clan. Those who could be heads of the New Yin Huang alliance, regardless of rank, had to be related to the Sun clan. It was because of this reason that Yi Chun made the decision to kill all the heads of the New Yin Huang alliance. Be it cruel or heartless, this was Yi Chun's decision. Yi Chun did not want to do anything that would cause him to suffer losses because of his soft heart. Thinking of this, he released his divine sense and locked onto the entire New Yin Huang city. At this moment, the roar of thunder and lightning had woken up all the players in New Yin Huang city. No matter if they were on duty, sleeping, or in the game world, they all looked at the city lord residence. What's going on? Why is there thunder so loudly at night? I find it weird too. The moon is still hanging in the sky, and there are stars. Why is there thunder? Do you want to go out and take a look? What's it to look at? Resting is more important. You have to know that in the game world, Yi Yu of Gojoseon will attack the Empire of Southeast Asia the moment the sun rises. That's true. That's more important. We have to rest up and then pick up the items. It's a pity that we have to hand over 99% of the items we pick up. Otherwise, we will be chased out of New Yin Huang City. Otherwise, I would have at least a set of yellow rank equipment by now. Do you want to die? Damn it, there are patrols everywhere in the city. If they hear you, not only will you be killed, you will also implicate me. Just grumble and pretend you didn't hear. Sleep, sleep. Just as the players in New Yin Huang City were woken up by the roar of thunder and were discussing amongst themselves, Yi Chun, who was using his divine sense to scan the entire New Yin Huang City, narrowed his eyes and raised his right hand. Punk! A violent airflow instantly erupted from Yi Chun's right fist, followed by a cracking sound. At this moment, the roar of thunder that had disappeared not long ago rang out again. Kaboom! Kaboom! Hundreds of bolts of lightning as thick as an arm tore through the dark night and lit up the entire New Yin Huang City. At this moment, the hundreds of bolts of lightning seemed to have grown eyes as they struck the heads of the New Yin Huang alliance leaders on the city walls and on the streets, killing them on the spot. Of course, the leaders of the New Yin Huang alliance who were in the houses did not escape the lightning strikes. At this moment, all the players in New Yin Huang City widened their eyes without exception. What? What's going on? This thunder, this lightning. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. No matter how I look at it, it's a spell. Yi Yu of Gojoseon seems to know lightning spells. Brother Bull has been struck to death. Captain has been struck to death. Just as the players in New Yin Huang City were discussing the sudden appearance of hundreds of bolts of lightning, Yi Chun's mind moved and the space in front of him warped. Looking at the warped space, Yi Chun stepped in and disappeared. The Sun Clan's lair, Divine Dragon City, City Lord's residence. What's going on? Why hasn't your big brother returned after so long? The Sun Clan's leader, who was sitting in the main seat, looked at the night sky outside and frowned. Dad, what's there to worry about? I gave big brother many teleportation talismans and many items. He can't be in danger. A young man in his 20s, who looked similar to Sun Chong, curled his lips and said when he heard this. When the Sun Clan's leader heard this, he frowned and asked, Little Wei, how did you get those items? Xiao Wei, where did you get those items? Why haven't you told me yet? I just walked around and got them. Didn't I tell you? I even brought you to see them. When the young man heard the clan leader's question, he expressionlessly glanced at the clan leader of the Sun Clan and said, That's right. You. The complexion of the Sun Clan's patriarch instantly turned incomparably ashen. However, in the end, he did not vent his anger. In the next second, the Sun Clan's leader let out a long sigh and said, Little Wei, you didn't let me teach you. Xiao Wei, it's my fault that I didn't let you continue your studies back then. I made you work to support your brother's college education. When the young man heard the Sun Clan's leader's words, his originally calm face darkened. At this moment, the Sun Clan's leader sighed and said, Little Wei, you must understand our family's financial situation. But Xiao Wei, you have to be clear about our family's financial situation back then. As your father, I really couldn't afford your education. Moreover, your brother swore to me that he would work hard to earn money after school so that he could buy you a house and get you a wife. Enough. The young man suddenly stood up and interrupted the words of the Sun Clan's patriarch. I was the one who found the opportunity before the meteor fell. I was the one who gave it to the Sun Clan. Those items and elixirs were also found by me. I also took them out and gave them to the Sun Clan. What else do you want me to do? The young man's words were full of resentment, and his eyes were already bloodshot. When the Sun Clan's leader heard this, he opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say for a moment. At this moment, the young man glanced at the Sun Clan's leader and continued, "Let me tell you, my dear father, I'm not a fool. What I've given you is enough to repay you for raising me. Also, I'll leave the Sun family in a while and hide outside until I succeed in that matter. I'll come back." When the Sun Clan's leader heard this, his expression changed drastically, and he shouted angrily. When the young man heard this, he took a deep breath. After letting out a long breath, he said, "I'm doing this to preserve the Sun Clan's roots. Don't forget, the person you want to scheme against is Yi Chun, and the items were provided by me. If Yi Chun finds out about this, no one will be able to live. Therefore, I have to leave the Sun Clan and only return when the matter is successful." As soon as the young man's words fell, the Sun Clan's leader's face immediately turned incomparably ashen. At this moment, the Sun Clan's patriarch had a feeling that his second son was using the entire Sun Clan as a blade. This feeling made the Sun Clan's leader very angry and also very melancholic, because the person who did this was his second son. Just as the Sun Clan's leader's face was ashen and he didn't know what to say, the space in the hall suddenly distorted, and then he saw a young man appear here. When the Sun Clan's leader saw this, he was first stunned, then his eyes suddenly shrank. Yi Chun. Chapter 10:51. As soon as the patriarch of the Sun Clan finished speaking, his second son, Sun Wei, suddenly changed his expression. Then, without thinking, he directly took out a handful of jade slips and prepared to use them. Seeing this, Yi Chun smiled coldly and raised his right hand. Then, a suction force appeared in the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 12 sounds were heard. The jade slips in Sun Wei's hand instantly flew to Yi Chun, and then Yi Chun caught them in his hand. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining Invincible Jade Slips X12. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chun was stunned. Invincible Jade Slip. After use, the user will be immune to all damage for 1 minute. Although the Invincible Jade Slip wasn't a particularly awesome tool, it was a member of the special tools, and it was very useful. The most important thing was that the number of times this thing appeared was not many. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have been stunned by the system's notification. Invincible Jade Slip. Although the Invincible Jade Slip could only guarantee 1 minute of invincibility, it could give players a chance to change their fate. For example, when facing an invincible opponent and their life was hanging by a thread, they could use the Invincible Jade Slip to be immune to all attacks for 1 minute. After that, they could use special escape tools such as teleportation jade slips to escape directly, or use other means to escape. This could be seen from the fact that Yi Chun had tried to kill Qin Yin back then, but she had used an Invincible Jade Slip and a greater teleportation jade slip to escape to the foreign game zone. Of course, this was only one use of the Invincible Jade Slip. In addition, the Invincible Jade Slip could also be used to defend against fatal attacks and to attack the enemy. The defense was easy to understand, and the attack wasn't complicated either. To be precise, the Invincible Jade Slip could be used together with the attack of injuring the enemy at a cost of 800. For example, when one had a powerful tool that didn't distinguish between friend and foe, but because the tool didn't distinguish between friend and foe and attack together, it couldn't be used casually. If one had the Invincible Jade Slip at that time, then the powerful tool that was originally used to perish together with the enemy would become a powerful tool that didn't hurt oneself, but only the enemy. Although that didn't apply to Yi Chun, the Invincible Jade Slip wasn't completely useless to Yi Chun. To be more precise, if Yi Chun could obtain a large number of invincible jade slips, he could not only use them to fight against the overlords of the great desolate world, but he could also give them to his army to use. To be more precise, it was to combine the invincible jade scroll with the large number of geomagnetic thunderbolt bombs that he had obtained before and give them to his soldiers for use. After all, the geomagnetic lightning bomb was very powerful, and once it was detonated, it would be a large-scale attack. If one's cultivation level was high, they could still withstand it. But if one's cultivation level was not high enough, it would be courting death. However, things were different with the invincible jade slip. He could use it without worrying about being blown up. Of course, Yi Chun had the spatial ability and could use it without any worries. But the problem was that Yi Chun's soldiers could not use it. Originally, Yi Chun had planned to use the geomagnetic lightning bomb himself, but who would have thought that he would see the invincible jade slips with the Sun Clan? Moreover, there were 12 of them. If it were just one or two, Yi Chun wouldn't care about it, much less take it to heart. But the problem was that Sun Wei had taken out 12 of them at once. This was a little unusual. After all, the probability of an invincible jade slip appearing wasn't high. Even if a player obtained it, there would only be one or two. At most, there would only be 2 or 3. This was a well-known secret in Yi Chun's previous life. Therefore, it was abnormal for Sun Wei to be able to take out 12 invincible jade slips so easily. Of course, Yi Chun couldn't be sure that Sun Wei had more invincible jade slips in his hands. But if Sun Wei could be the host of a parasitic soul body, then it would be a different story. Others might not know what a parasitic soul body was, but how could Yi Chun, who had already subdued 3 parasitic soul bodies, not know? It was an extraterrestrial creature that fell to Earth along with a meteor. As long as a parasitic soul body was given a chance, it would constantly rely on its host to devour spiritual objects of heaven and earth. Then, it would replace the host and evolve into a crystallizer. Finally, it would devour all the spiritual objects of heaven and earth and spirit chi of heaven and earth on earth. At first glance, this thing was an extremely dangerous existence that must be destroyed. But in reality, it was and it wasn't. Yes, it was because parasitic soul bodies were indeed the parasites of the planet. If left alone, Earth would definitely be devoured and become a dead planet. No, it was because after Yi Chun obtained the ancient contract book, he came up with a huge and perverted plan. That was to devour the stars. To be more precise, Yi Chun wanted to use the ancient contract book to subdue parasitic soul bodies and then cultivate them into crystallizers. After that, Yi Chun would take the crystallizers away from Earth and bring them to a planet outside Earth. In this way, the crystallizers that Yi Chun brought to a planet outside Earth could devour the planet at will, thus providing Yi Chun with an endless supply of energy crystals. In this way, Yi Chun, as well as Yi Chun's subordinates and his army, could all benefit from this, and it would be an endless stream of benefits. This was Yi Chun's devouring the stars plan. However, this plan had just begun, and so far, Yi Chun had only subdued 3 parasitic soul bodies, and one of them didn't have a host. However, this was not important. What was important was that Sun Wei of the Sun Clan was very likely to be a host with a parasitic soul body. As for why Yi Chun made such a judgment, it was because Yi Chun heard the conversation between Sun Wei and his father, the patriarch of the Sun Clan, and saw the 12 invincible jade slips that Sun Wei took out. At first glance, it didn't make sense at all. How could Yi Chun determine that there was a parasitic soul body in Sun Wei's head just based on a few words and the 12 invincible jade slips? However, this was indeed the case. At this moment, no one knew the characteristics of a parasitic soul body better than Yi Chun. To be more precise, any host with a parasitic soul body in their body would subconsciously go out and find all kinds of powerful props or life-saving treasures because of the parasitic soul body. This was the benefit that a parasitic soul body brought to the host after parasitizing it. Of course, the purpose of a parasitic soul body was purely to save the host's life. Otherwise, its parasitism would be interrupted. If it was light, the host would be severely injured, and if it was heavy, it would die directly. It was also because of this characteristic of a parasitic soul body that Yi Chun made the judgment that there was a high possibility of a parasitic soul body in Sun Wei's head. Otherwise, how could Sun Wei have obtained the rare-grade puppet props and the treasure-grade invincible jade slips? A coincidence? Good luck? It was possible, but if there were too many coincidences and too much good luck, it wouldn't be a coincidence or luck. Whether Sun Wei was a parasitic soul body or not, it couldn't be determined for the time being. However, if the parasitic soul body without a host was taken out, it could be determined. If that was the case, then this bastard definitely had more invincible jade slips in his hands. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, Sun Wei, who had his invincible jade slips snatched away by Yi Chun, made another move. Another 12 invincible jade slips appeared in his hands. The chances of this bastard being the host of a parasitic soul body were even higher now. Thinking of this, Yi Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he made another move with his right hand. In an instant, the 12 invincible jade slips that Sun Wei had summoned were sucked into his hands. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining invincible jade slips X12. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chun raised his right hand and pointed at Sun Wei. In an instant, Sun Wei was imprisoned on the spot. After several attempts to confirm that not only was he unable to move, but he couldn't even use the items in his storage space, Sun Wei's face suddenly turned pale. At this moment, the clan leader of the Sun Clan suddenly coughed a few times. Then, he looked at Yi Chun and bowed solemnly. "Greetings, Yi Yu of Gojoseon." Hearing this, Yi Chun raised his right hand. The black and thick Godslayer instantly appeared in his right hand. When the clan leader of the Sun Clan saw this, his face suddenly stiffened. Then he said in a trembling voice, "Yi Yu of Gojoseon, is there some misunderstanding?" As soon as the clan leader of the Sun Clan finished speaking, Yi Chun stabbed the Godslayer in his right hand forward without hesitation. With a poochie sound, the black and thick Godslayer instantly pierced through the heart of the clan leader of the Sun Clan and came out of his body. "Lord Yu of Beach, this lowly one is willing to be your slave." When Sun Wei saw this, he suddenly shuddered. Then, he hurriedly shouted at Yi Chun. After hearing Sun Wei's words, Yi Chun glanced at Sun Wei. Then, with a thought, the ancient contract book instantly appeared in front of him. In the next second, a faintly discernible shadow suddenly flew out of the ancient contract book. At this moment, the eyes of Sun Wei, who had just begged for mercy, suddenly froze. Then, Sun Wei subconsciously looked at the shadow that flew out of the ancient contract book. At this moment, a thought was transmitted directly from the shadow to Yi Chun. "Master, this human is the host." When Yi Chun heard the message from the shadow, which was the parasitic soul that he had taken as a slave, his eyes suddenly widened. F*CK. I'm going to make a fortune this time. Chapter 1052. Thinking up to this point, Yi Chun raised his left hand and pointed at Sun Wei in the air. Buzz! After the sound of the air vibrating violently, a thin cyan thread with golden runes circulating around it appeared out of thin air. Then, it charged straight at Sun Wei. At this instant, Sun Wei, who wanted to submit to Yi Chun in exchange for a chance to live, suddenly had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. This feeling came suddenly and was somewhat inexplicable. After all, Yi Chun's actions did not seem like he wanted to kill him. Furthermore, he also knew very well that if Yi Chun wanted to kill him, there was simply no need for him to go through so much trouble. He could have stabbed him to death with a single spear strike. However, in the end, such a thought still uncontrollably appeared in his mind. However, before Sun Wei could react, the cyan thread with golden runes circulating around it directly wrapped itself around Sun Wei's head and disappeared in a flash. What Yi Chun used was naturally a sealing technique that was specially used to seal other people's sea of consciousness. As for the purpose of this technique, it was to prevent the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's body from voluntarily leaving Sun Wei due to the danger. Yi Chun wanted to obtain the invincible jade strip. However, Yi Chen also wanted to subdue Sun Wei. To be exact, he wanted to subdue the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's head. If Yi Chen did not seal Sun Wei, then there was a very high chance that the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's body would voluntarily leave Sun Wei and escape. Yi Chen did not wish for such a situation to occur. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have directly sealed Sun Wei after confirming that he was the host of the parasitic soul. EU of Gojoseon, what is the meaning of this? Sun Wei tried his best to steady his suddenly violently beating heart. Then, he looked at Yi Chen and asked cautiously. When Yi Chen heard Sun Wei's question, he glanced at Sun Wei and said, "If you want to survive, then you have to sign the contract. If you want to live, then sign the slave contract. You don't need to know anything else." When Sun Wei heard this, he could not help but be startled. He knew that Yi Chen would not kill him. Otherwise, he would be a dead man now. He had also thought that Yi Chen would accept him. After all, Yi Chen did not kill him directly because he heard him say that he was willing to be a slave. However, no matter how much Sun Wei thought about it, he never thought that Yi Chen would actually bring up a term he had never heard of before. Slave contract. What was this? No matter how foolish or stupid Sun Wei was, and how he had never heard of it before, he would still be able to deduce its hidden meaning. To be more precise, the slave contract was definitely Yi Chen's method of controlling Sun Wei. As long as he signed it, there would be all sorts of restrictions imposed on Sun Wei. In this way, Sun Wei, would become a true slave. Moreover, he would be a slave who would not be able to have any personal thoughts and have no freedom. To Sun Wei, who wanted to be Yi Chen's slave, this was not what he wanted to see. To be more precise, Sun Wei's desire to be Yi Chen's slave was just an excuse for him to survive. Furthermore, Sun Wei's desire to be Yi Chen's slave was actually to use the identity of a slave to enter Yi Chen's Samsara city. On the surface, he was working for Yi Chen, but in fact, he was secretly plotting for himself and even looking for an opportunity to kill Yi Chen. In this way, Sun Wei's humiliation for the greater good will be worth it. Then, Sun Wei would become the strongest player on Earth, the strongest overlord. Because if he killed Yi Chen, everything that belonged to Yi Chen would become Sun Wei's. Under such circumstances, it would be difficult for Sun Wei not to become the overlord of Earth. This was Sun Wei's true thought in the depths of his heart. But now, what did he hear? Yi Chen wanted him to sign the slave contract. If he did not sign it, he would die. If he signed it, he could live, but the little abacus in his heart would disappear with it. If he did not sign it, he would definitely die. At the thought of these two extreme results, Sun Wei could not stay calm. To sign or not to sign, Sun Wei was more inclined to think that he could live even if he did not sign it. But he knew very well that in front of Yi Chen, he had no room to bargain. It seems that you have made your choice. After seeing the hesitant expression on Sun Wei's face, Yi Chen smiled coldly and then said. After that, he pointed the bloody Godslayer in his right hand at Sun Wei. Seeing the Godslayer pointing at him, Sun Wei's face suddenly turned pale, and then he screamed, "I'll sign it! I'll sign it!" Just as Sun Wei shouted the word sign, because of the fear of death, the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's sea of consciousness suddenly trembled violently. However, no matter how the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's sea of consciousness trembled, it could not rush out of Sun Wei's sealed sea of consciousness. With his divine sense locked on his Sun Wei, Yi Chen instantly sensed the abnormality in Sun Wei's sea of consciousness and raised his eyebrows. This was a sense of danger. Unfortunately, feeling it was useless. As long as he used the ancient contract book to sign a slave contract with Sun Wei, the parasitic soul in his body would directly become a slave due to symbiosis. Thinking of this, Yi Chen willed the ancient contract book to appear in front of Yi Chen. After glancing at the ancient contract book in front of him, Yi Chen immediately flipped it open. In the next second, the idea of signing a slave contract, a master-slave contract, or an equal contract instantly appeared in Yi Chen's mind. A slave contract. After Yi Chen made his decision, A massive 8 trigrams formation instantly appeared in the hall of the city lord's mansion, emitting 10,000 rays of golden light. There were tens of thousands of runes within, and on the screen of light, tadpole-like characters constantly swam about. It was abnormally gorgeous. At this moment, the 8 trigrams formation beneath Yi Chen's feet suddenly emitted 2 red pillars of light that enveloped Yi Chen and Sun Wei. In the next second, the voice of the soul that contained the aura of the great Tao sounded out. Then, Sun Wei involuntarily closed his eyes. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, when the voice of the soul that contained the aura of the great Tao ended, Yi Chen felt as if he could control Sun Wei's life and death with just his thoughts. Sensing this, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Success. Thinking of this, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, with a thought, he instantly put away the ancient contract book. In the next second, Yi Chen waved his right hand and instantly removed the sealing technique on Sun Wei's body. Sun Wei had already signed a slave contract with Yi Chen. His life and death were in Yi Chen's hands. Not only did Yi Chen know this, but Sun Wei, who had signed a slave contract, also knew this. Thus, no matter how careful Sun Wei was, he didn't dare to betray Yi Chen or scheme against Yi Chen. Even if he had such thoughts, he wouldn't dare. This was because as long as he dared, or even had such thoughts, the slave contract would directly erase him. Moreover, it would be a merciless erasure that wouldn't give him any chance to explain. It was also for this reason that Yi Chen had directly removed the sealing technique on Sun Wei after signing the slave contract. At this moment, Sun Wei opened his eyes, looked at Yi Chen, and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, master." When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and said, "Take out all the tools and treasures in your interspatial storage." "Yes, master." When Sun Wei heard this, he hurriedly bowed. Then, with a wave of his right hand, a large pile of jade slips instantly appeared in the hall of the Divine Dragon City's City Lord Mansion. F***CK. How many invincible jade slips did he have? At least 100,000 among the jade slips that Sun Wei took out. At least 90% were invincible jade slips, and less than 10% of the jade slips were teleportation jade slips, as well as many large-scale magic attack jade slips. Among these jade slips, the latter ones weren't important. What was important was the invincible jade slips in front. Yi Chen originally thought that there would be hundreds or even thousands of invincible jade slips in Sun Wei's interspatial storage. After all, invincible jade slips didn't appear many times in Yi Chen's previous life. Even if Sun Wei was the host of the parasitic soul, and the parasitic soul would search for treasures that fell to earth for him, it wouldn't affect this result. But in the end, what did Yi Chen see? There were at least 100,000 invincible jade slips. Damn, he didn't expect the parasitic soul in Sun Wei's body to find so many invincible jade slips for Sun Wei. Although he was a little surprised, but it felt great. Then, the invincible jade slips in the hall, as well as various other items, flew toward Yi Chen and then disappeared. After Yi Chen collected all the jade slips, Yi Chen extended his divine sense into the small world. There were a total of 136,823 invincible jade slips. Not bad. Not bad. Thinking of this, Yi Chen looked straight at Sun Wei and asked, "What's the matter? Apart from what you have taken out, does the Sun Clan have any other good things? Or a secret realm?" "Master, apart from the jade slips in my hand, the Sun Clan also has a spirit spring, but its grade is not high. Around the spirit spring, there are a total of 121 spiritual herbs collected by the Sun Clan." Hearing this, Sun Wei hurriedly bowed and saluted loudly. Sun Wei had signed a slave contract with Yi Chen and became Yi Chen's slave. No matter what Yi Chen asked, he had to answer honestly without hiding anything. Otherwise, the power of the contract would directly punish him and make him suffer a fate worse than death. Otherwise, Sun Wei wouldn't be so honest and respectful. Hearing this, Yi Chen glanced at Sun Wei and then waved his right hand. 10 invincible jade slips appeared in an instant, and were thrown to Sun Wei by Yi Chun. Sun Wei's eyes lit up when he saw this. He hurriedly reached out and caught the invincible jade slips that Yi Chun threw over. "Thank you for the reward, Master." Sun Wei was a member of the Sun Clan and also the host of the Parasitic Soul. No matter what identity he had, he liked to have the invincible jade slips in his hand to save his life. Otherwise, Sun Wei would not be so happy. Hearing this, Yi Chun nodded and then said, "The Sun Clan is destroyed. The other members of the Sun Clan need to be destroyed. Go and call them over. As for this divine dragon city and the spirit spring, I'll leave them to you." Yi Chun used the ancient contract book to enslave Sun Wei so that his parasitic soul could be parasitic. He left the spirit spring and spiritual herbs so that Sun Wei's parasitic soul could evolve as soon as possible. Only when Sun Wei's parasitic soul evolved into a crystallizer could Yi Chun use it in his devouring the universe plan. Otherwise, Yi Chun would definitely not leave the spirit spring of the Sun Clan and the spiritual herbs around it to Sun Wei. As for why Yi Chun wanted to kill the other members of the Sun Clan after enslaving Sun Wei, the reason was not complicated. The Sun Clan had schemed against Yi Chun. Of course, this was not the key. The key was that the members of the Sun Clan other than Sun Wei were useless to Yi Chun. Since they were useless, what was the point of keeping them? Did he want to give them a chance to rise and then let them take revenge on Yi Chun? What a joke. Yi Chun would not do such a stupid thing. To be more precise, Yi Chun would not let any of his enemies go. At first glance, it did not make sense. Sun Wei was also an enemy, but the truth was yes and no. Yes, it was because Sun Wei was indeed Yi Chun's enemy. No, it was because Sun Wei was the host of the parasitic soul. As long as the parasitic soul evolved into a spirit, Sun Wei would disappear completely, and the one to replace him would be the spirit after the parasitic soul evolved. It could be said that Sun Wei was already a dead man from the moment he was parasitized by the parasitic soul. There was no need for Yi Chun to eliminate such an existence. Moreover, eliminating him would also affect Yi Chun's devouring the heavens plan. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, Sun Wei bowed without hesitation. "Yes, Master." After Sun Wei finished speaking, he simply left the hall. If Yi Chun had said such words before signing the slave contract, Sun Wei might have had some misgivings. But now, Sun Wei did not have the slightest misgivings or could not bear it, because he did not dare and could not. Otherwise, the slave contract would teach him one thing, which was the consequences of disobeying orders. Not long after, Sun Wei led a group of men and women to the hall. When the members of the Sun Clan saw the patriarch lying in a pool of blood in the hall, they were all stunned. The next second, the members of the Sun Clan were in an uproar. The patriarch has been killed. Bull bastard, who are you? How dare you assassinate the patriarch of the Sun Clan? Kill him. Don't let him go." Just as the members of the Sun Clan were enraged by seeing the corpse of the patriarch of the Sun Clan and were cursing, a middle-aged man who was observing Yi Chun was suddenly stunned. Then his eyes suddenly shrank. "Yi Chun! He is Yi Chun!" This middle-aged man saw the Godslayer in Yi Chun's hand and saw Yi Chun's appearance. Then he recalled the legend related to Yi Chun. Finally, he was horrified to discover a fact that made his heart almost stop. That was the young man standing next to the patriarch of the Sun Clan in the hall was the #1 player in the East, the #1 player on Earth, Yi Chun. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, the cursing that had been noisy just now came to an abrupt end. Swoosh! The gazes of the members of the Sun Clan, without exception, all looked towards Yi Chun. Then they saw the members of the Sun Clan all gulping down a mouthful of saliva. Yi Chun glanced at the members of the Sun Clan who were still noisy just now. Then he looked at Sun Wei, who was standing at the back, and asked, "You're all here?" Yi Chun didn't know how many people there were in the Sun Clan or who they were. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have asked Sun Wei to call for them, much less ask Sun Wei. "Master, there were some people in the game. I directly killed them." When Sun Wei heard this, he hurriedly bowed and said. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded in satisfaction. The members of the Sun Clan all stared with their eyes wide open. They were shocked by the way Sun Wei addressed Yi Chun. They were shocked because Sun Wei had personally killed the members of the Sun clan. However, at the moment when they were astonished, Yi Chun raised his left hand and pointed at the members of the Sun clan in the air. "You Lord Beach, I'm willing to be a slave. Spare my life." The middle-aged man who first discovered Yi Chen's identity saw Yi Chen's actions, and his eyes suddenly shrank. Then he knelt on the ground with a plop and shouted loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of thunder that shook heaven and earth instantly sounded. Kaboom! Kaboom! At the same time, dozens of lightning bolts that were as thick as an arm instantly cut through the dark night. Then, they directly blasted towards the members of the Sun clan in the front yard of the Divine Dragon City's City Lord's mansion. Boom, boom, boom. Incomparably dense explosions sounded in an instant. Then, the bodies of the remaining members of the Sun clan directly exploded. Then, charred chunks of flesh splattered all over the sky. Glancing at the charred chunks of flesh on the ground, Yi Chun immediately looked at the extremely calm Sun Wei and said, "Cultivate well. If you hear that other clans have any plans against me, inform me immediately." There were many hidden forces in the real world. Yi Chun only knew a portion of them. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that most of the hidden forces were hostile towards Yi Chun. It was also because of this reason that Yi Chun told Sun Wei to pay attention to this matter. As for what Yi Chun would do if such a thing really happened, it was very simple. He would kill all of them without leaving a single one behind. It could be said that Sun Wei, the host of the parasitic soul, could not only contribute to Yi Chun's devouring the starry sky plan, but he was also a chess piece that Yi Chun had placed in the hidden forces. Just like the two members of the hidden forces that Yi Chun had subdued before, they were also members of the hidden forces that parasitized the host of the soul. In that way, they would help Yi Chun inquire about the plans of the hidden forces and collect all kinds of information that was circulating among the hidden forces for Yi Chun. Of course, as chess pieces, they were not omnipotent. They could not hear all the news and know all the plans. Otherwise, how could the two members of the hidden forces that had been taken as slaves by Yi Chun not know about the Sun clan scheme against Yi Chun this time? Of course, this was not important. What was important was that with them around, Yi Chun would definitely not be kept in the dark by the hidden forces like before. He would not know the hidden forces' plans and schemes. Although Yi Chun would not know all the plans and schemes of the hidden forces because of these three slaves, the plans and schemes that were known by the three slaves could not be hidden from Yi Chun. "Yes, master." Hearing this, Sun Wei hurriedly bowed and said loudly. Chapter 1054. After Yi Chun heard Sun Wei's words, he nodded. Then, with a thought, the space in front of him instantly distorted. Looking at the distorted space, Yi Chun stepped into it and disappeared. Yi Chun left, but the place he was going to was not Samsara City. To be more precise, the place Yi Chun was going to was the headquarters of the other hidden forces that he saw in the sole memory of the New Yin Huang alliance leader. Together with the Sun clan, they had obtained the usage of the summoning altar of the monster race and had the intention of using it to summon the experts of the primitive world to deal with Yi Chun. Yi Chun naturally could not let such existences continue to live. Even if Yi Chun had met Empress Hari in advance because of their summoning, it was still the same. After a few minutes, the 5 hidden forces were found by Yi Chun one by one and destroyed in one fell swoop. Although Yi Chun did not find anything particularly good in the headquarters of these hidden forces, he did get a lot of spiritual herbs. Samsara City, the back of the City Lord's mansion. The space suddenly distorted, and then Yi Chun, who had just left, stepped out and appeared here. As soon as Yi Chun appeared, Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhenmi, Philos Aureus, Xiao Qiao, and the 3-year-old Empress Hari and Nana saw Yi Chun. In the next second, all the girls, including the 3-year-old lowly Empress Hari, called out in unison, "Husband!" The women's voices were very sweet, making Yi Chun's heart skip a beat. After a brief moment of emotion, Yi Chun nodded with a smile. He then looked at the lunar rabbit beside the women and said, "Let's go." The trivial matters have been dealt with. You should return to the lunar star. After Yi Chun finished speaking, he waved his right hand. The black and thick Khanate Cardinal Treasure Godslayer and the 12 Khanate Coppermen of Destiny instantly appeared beside Yi Chun. Then, they flew straight towards the lunar rabbit in the pavilion. Yi Chun had taken out the Khanate Cardinal Treasure Godslayer and the 12 Khanate Coppermen of Fortune to resolve the crisis of the lunar star. Then, Changshi would not be forced to marry Dijun in order to protect the lunar star. At first glance, Yi Chun's approach was a little stupid. One had to know that he had taken out the Khanate Cardinal Treasure Godslayer and the 12 Khanate Coppermen of Destiny just to resolve the lunar star's crisis. No ordinary person would do such a thing. After all, Changshi and Shiha on the lunar star had nothing to do with Yi Chun. But the truth was that Yi Chun had not done so out of willfulness. Instead, he had done so because of Yi Chun's own calculations. Although the lunar rabbit had told Yi Chun about the lunar star's crisis, the lunar rabbit had already recognized Yi Chun as her master. There was no possibility of deception. Therefore, Yi Chun did not think that the lunar rabbit was lying. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi Chun was now very clear about one thing. That was, as long as he destroyed the devouring bone worm that the Dongwang Tai had placed on the lunar laurel tree, neither Chang, Shi nor Shiha would choose Demon Emperor June in the end. In this way, Yi Chun had a very high chance of making Shiha and Chang Shi, the two goddesses of the Eldritch world, become Yi Chun's women. Of course, if the lunar rabbit had not said that only Yi Chun had truly refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, such a Yi Chun was fatally attractive to Chang Shi and Xia, who had refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire. Moreover, Yi Chun's union with Chang Shi and Shiha was in line with the great Tao of Yin and Yang, so Yi Chun definitely would not have put in so much effort to resolve the lunar star's crisis. One had to know that if Yi Chun had not taken out the Godslayer of his own accord, then there was a very high chance that Yi Chun would lose the Khanate Cardinal Treasure Godslayer because of this. After all, the Godslayer's grade was there for all to see. As soon as it appeared, everyone would make a move to snatch it. Even Chang Shi and Shiha would not be an exception. Of course, this was only an assumption. And the assumption was that Yi Chun had not refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, nor had he subdued the lunar rabbit. Only then would Chang Shi and Shiha make a move to snatch Yi Chun's Godslayer after seeing it. In reality, Yi Chun had completely refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire and subdued the lunar rabbit. Under such circumstances, there was a natural attraction between Chang Shi and Shiha, who had refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, and Yi Chun. With such a special characteristic, neither Chang Shi nor Shi would deliberately try to steal Yi Chun's God-slaying spear. After all, Yi Chun, who had refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, was their destined husband. The lunar rabbit, who had also refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, had clearly told Yi Chun this. And there was no element of falsehood. This was because the lunar rabbit, who had acknowledged Yi Chun as its master, would not deceive Yi Chun. And Yi Chun, who had been reborn, also knew this. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not have thought that Dijun or Tai would be a good match for Chang Shi or Shiha. Of course, the truth was completely different from what Yi Chun had thought. Both Dijun and Tai used the Grand Sun Primordial Fire, not refined it. Thus, they were not a natural match with Chang Shi or Xia, who had refined the Grand Sun Primordial Fire. Of course, this secret came from the lunar rabbit. If not for the lunar rabbit, Yi Chun would have thought that Dijun would eventually marry Chang Shi, and that it would not change because of anyone. Now that Yi Chun knew how to change Chang Shi and Shiha's fate, he would not leave them alone. When the lunar rabbit saw this, her eyes lit up. Then, she bowed to Yi Chun excitedly and said, "Thank you, master." The lunar rabbit was so excited because Yi Chun had really taken out the primordial treasure Godslayer, as promised. He had asked her to take it back to the untainted world's lunar star and resolve the crisis there. This was not something an ordinary person could do. One had to know that this was a Khanate cardinal treasure, the God-slaying spear. It was the weapon that made fiend ancestor Rahu famous. So many mighty figures in the primordial world were searching for information about it, hoping to become its master. As for the 12 primordial bronze men of luck, the lunar rabbit had never seen them before, but she could still sense the aura of primordial spiritual treasures from them. It was because the lunar rabbit knew that Yi Chun had taken out the God Slayer and the 12 primordial bronze men of luck that she was so excited and touched. When Yi Chun heard the lunar rabbit's grateful words, he smiled and said, "Thank you. The crisis of the lunar star must be resolved as soon as possible. Also, when you return to the lunar star, remember to tell Chang Shi and Shiha to seal the lunar star from now on. Unless I go there personally, no matter who approaches the lunar star, no matter what the other party says, do not activate the guardian formation of the lunar star." Yi Chen's main purpose was to prevent Di Jun or the Dongwang Tai from entering the unguarded lunar star again and plotting against Chang Shi and Shiha by using the Devouring Boneworm. In the end, they would force Chang Shi to marry Di Jun. Yi Chun, who had already treated Chang Shi and Shiha as his women, naturally did not want to see such a thing happen. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not have told the lunar rabbit to activate the guardian formation of the lunar star after returning to the lunar star and resolving the crisis of the lunar star. This was something that could not be helped. After all, Yi Chun was still in the beginner's area of the three kingdoms and had not yet ascended. Therefore, in order to prevent Chang Shi and Shiha from being schemed against, the only way was to activate the guardian formation of the lunar star and seal the lunar star. "Yes, Master." After hearing Yi Chen's words, the lunar rabbit solemnly bowed to Yi Chun and then took the God Slayer in her hands. Just as the lunar rabbit obtained the God-slaying spear, the 12 connate copper men of destiny that were floating beside the lunar rabbit suddenly trembled. Then, they surrounded the lunar rabbit. In the next second, the heaven spirit earth fiend formation was instantly applied to the lunar rabbit by the 12 connate copper men of fortune. At the same time, the lunar rabbit's aura became illusory and undetectable. Then, it disappeared without a trace. The 12 connate copper men of fortune had the ability to disrupt heavenly secrets, block detection, and prevent deduction. Yi Chun took out the 12 connate copper men of fortune to prevent the God Slayer from releasing its aura after it was brought to the primordial world by the lunar rabbit. Of course, this was not omnipotent, but at least for a period of time, the God Slayer's aura could not be detected. Even if Hong Jun wanted to investigate, it would take some time, and this time was enough for the lunar rabbit to resolve the crisis of the lunar star. Yi Chun glanced at the lunar rabbit, whose aura had been completely concealed, and nodded in satisfaction. Then, he opened his mouth to speak. "Come back quickly. The God Slayer can't leave me for too long." "Yes, Master, I'll go back now. I'll be back soon." When the lunar rabbit heard this, she hurriedly bowed. Then, with a thought, she turned into starlight and disappeared in a flash. Chapter 1055. Chaos World, Lunar Star, Under a Laurel Tree. "Sister, are you still unable to divine little rabbit's whereabouts?" She had asked worriedly as she looked at the laurel tree that was riddled with holes. Chang Shi, who had just arrived under the laurel tree, shook her head when she heard Shia's question. "Sister, it's strange. The last few times I tried to divine little rabbit's whereabouts, it was all a blur. This time, I used the power of the lunar star to try to divine little rabbit's whereabouts. But just as it was about to become clear, little rabbit's whereabouts became chaotic again." Hearing this, Shiha frowned and said in a deep voice, "Someone has interfered with the heavenly secrets." "Sister, could it be Di Jun or Tai? What are they trying to do? Could it be that they want to use Little Rabbit to threaten us?" Chang Shi's eyes widened as she asked angrily. Shiha shook her head and said, "It was neither Di Jun nor Tai. Although the two of them have the ability to interfere with heaven's secrets, they cannot interfere with the divination that is supported by the power of the lunar star. Could it be that someone is plotting against us?" Chang Shi's expression changed when she heard this, and she asked hurriedly, "For the time being, we can't judge the specifics, but one thing is certain. Little Rabbit should have found clues about demon ancestor Rahu's god-killing spear or the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction. Shiha said with a sigh. Changshi's expression changed drastically when she heard this. Sister, isn't Little Rabbit in danger? It's hard to say. It depends on her luck, Shiha said softly, a trace of sadness flashing across her eyes. It's all my fault. If I had known, I would have cultivated seriously from the beginning. When I saw Dongwang Tai, I shouldn't have let him go to the lunar star so easily. She started to blame herself. But before she could finish, Shiha interrupted her. Sister, what's past is past. There's no need to blame yourself. What we need to do now is to think of a way to get rid of the devouring bone worm in the laurel tree. Otherwise, the lunar star will be destroyed because of this. Sister, Changshi's eyes reddened when she heard this. At this moment, the originally peaceful lunar star suddenly distorted, and then a large patch of starlight appeared out of nowhere. When he and Changshi saw this, they were both stunned. Then their eyes lit up. Little Rabbit. As soon as they finished speaking, the vast expanse of starlight vanished without a trace. Then, they saw the lunar rabbit with the connate cardinal treasure godslayer in her hand and 12 connate copper men of destiny floating around her. Shiha immediately saw the black and thick god-slaying spear in the lunar rabbit's hand. She also saw the 12 copper men of providence floating around the lunar rabbit. It was precisely because she saw it that she was stunned. This was because the thick black godslayer in the lunar rabbit's hand gave Shihi a feeling that it was filled with a destructive aura. However, when she tried to sense it carefully, she couldn't sense anything. This was because the aura of the godslayer was tightly sealed by the 12 copper men of destiny surrounding the lunar rabbit. Not a trace of it could be seen. Little Rabbit, where have you been? Do you know that your sister and I were worried about you? When she saw the lunar rabbit, she wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes out of joy and asked with a look of reproach and surprise. The lunar rabbit, who had just been transported to the lunar star, shook her dizzy head after hearing he, and Changshi's words. Then she looked at he and Changshi and called out, Sister Changshi, Sister Shihi, quick, activate the lunar star's astral guardian array. Both he and Changshi were stunned when they heard the lunar rabbit's words. Right now, the base of the astral guardian array, the lunar osmanthus tree, was bitterly resisting the devouring bone worms. If they activated the astral guardian array now, the devouring bone worms would definitely rush into the core of the lunar osmanthus tree and begin to multiply and devour the power of the lunar star. This way, even if they found something that could eliminate the devouring bone worms, it would be useless. Sister Changshi, Sister Shihi, believe me, not only did I find a way to get rid of the devouring bone worms this time, but I also found the destined husband for both of you. When the lunar rabbits saw Changshi and Shihi's stunned expressions, she hurriedly waved the godslayer in her hand and said. When Changshi and Shihi heard this, they were both stunned. In the next second, both Changshi and Shihi looked at the godslayer in the lunar rabbit's hand at the same time. After a brief moment of shock, Changshi and Shihi looked at each other, then raised their right hands and slapped the lunar osmanthus tree. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The buzzing sound that shook the entire lunar star instantly rang out. Then, countless moonlights suddenly erupted from the lunar star and turned into runes that contained the aura of the Great Path. In the blink of an eye, the runes wrapped tightly around the lunar star. The astral guardian array of the lunar star had been activated. When the lunar rabbit saw this, she hurriedly looked at the godslayer in her right hand and said, Godslayer, you have to be strong. Godslayer, you have to do your best. Master sent you here to destroy the devouring bone worms. As soon as the lunar rabbit finished speaking, Changshi and Shihi both widened their eyes. They were shocked by the godslayer that the lunar rabbit had mentioned, and they were also shocked by the master that the lunar rabbit had mentioned. While Changshi and Shihi were still in shock, the godslayer in the lunar rabbit's hand suddenly trembled. Buzz! In that instant, an aura that could destroy heaven and earth erupted from the godslayer. Then the godslayer turned into a streak of black light and stabbed at the lunar osmanthus tree. There was a splurt. The strange moon tree, a connate spirit root, was completely defenseless against the Godslayer's attack. When Changshi and Shihi saw this, their expressions both tensed. At that moment, the Godslayer's black light flashed. Then, tens of thousands of soul shadows suddenly appeared in the lunar osmanthus tree. Then the Godslayer devoured them all. Changshi and Shihi, who had been staring at the Godslayer, saw this, and their eyes both lit up. At that moment, an incomparably grateful consciousness suddenly appeared from the lunar osmanthus tree and was transmitted to the Godslayer. After stabbing the lunar osmanthus tree, the Godslayer trembled when he sensed this grateful consciousness. Then, he left the lunar osmanthus tree and went to the lunar rabbit's side. Sun Palace, Sunstar. Dongwang Tai, who was cultivating in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes and looked directly at the lunar star. In the next second, Dongwang Tai shot to his feet and roared. Who? Who helped the lunar star? The real world, Earth, East, Reincarnation City, back house of the City Lord. Yi Chun, who was chatting with Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, Mi Zhen, Empress Hari, and other girls, suddenly heard two system notifications. Ding! Player Yi Chun interfered with the operation of the Eldritch World. The plot of the Celestial Emperor's wedding has deviated. Ding! Because of player Yi Chun's interference, player Yi Chun has officially become the mortal enemy of the Eldritch World's demon race. Once player Yi Chun's identity is discovered by the demon race, they will not rest until one of them is dead. Player Yi Chun, please be careful. Chapter 1056. The moment the system notification ended, Yi Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He then raised his head and looked at the bright moon hanging in the sky. That went well. Not bad, not bad. This time, Dongwang Tai would be furious. As for Di Jun, that bastard would be so angry that he would vomit blood. Yi Chun couldn't be blamed for thinking that way. After all, to beastly Emperor Jun and Dongwang Tai, marrying Chang, she was something they had to do. The reason was simple. As long as Di Jun could marry Chang Shi, their wedding would be the first wedding since the beginning of the Untainted Land. A wedding like this would earn them a lot of merit points. Of course, this was not the only benefit of Di Jun marrying Chang Shi. To be more precise, if Emperor Jun really married Chang Shi, his position in the demon tribe of the Untainted World would be even more stable. Most importantly, after marrying Chang Shi, Di Jun's cultivation would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. This was the reason why Dongwang Tai had plotted against the lunar star and threatened Chang Shi and Shihi. Of course, this was also Di Jun's idea. However, Dongwang Tai was the one who had carried it out. Now, Dongwang Tai and Monster Emperor Jun's plan had been easily crushed by Yi Chun's intervention. This way, their coercion method would be completely ineffective. This way, both Chang Shi and Shihi would not have to worry about anything anymore. This was because the lunar star had been protected. There was no need for them to compromise, and there was no need for them to sacrifice themselves by marrying Di Jun, whom they had never liked. As for Di Jun and Tai, it was possible for them to fly into a rage out of humiliation and forcefully capture Chang Shi or Shihi and force them to marry each other. However, the result was basically failure. This was because the devouring bone worm in the lunar cassia tree, the base of the lunar star's guardian formation, had been completely destroyed by Godslayer. Such a lunar star could fully activate the astral guardian array. As long as the astral protection array of the lunar star was activated, neither Dongwang Tai nor Fei Emperor Jun will be able to barge into the lunar star as easily as before. At the very least, they would not be able to succeed for hundreds or thousands of years. Even if they mobilized a large number of their subordinates, even if they used the innate spiritual treasure He too, the innate spiritual treasure, the Bell of Chaos, the result was still the same. It could be said that as long as Fei Emperor Jun or Dongwang Tai did not prove their Tao and become a saint, they would not be able to attack the lunar star in a short time. This was the result of Yi Chun not appearing. If Yi Chun was included, it would not be long before he completed all the plans for the Three Kingdoms Rookie Zone. then the entire country would ascend to the primordial world. That would be different. By then, both Changxi and Shi would have Yi Chen support. Although Yi Chen couldn't help them much in the short term, as time passed, Yi Chen's help would definitely increase. After all, the Fate dynasty's boost to one's cultivation was extremely terrifying. Furthermore, Yi Chen's imperial ruler's seal was a top-grade 9 orifices exquisite stone. With it, the initial 9 times cultivation speed would increase to 81 times. To be more precise, once Yi Chen established the Fate dynasty, he would directly obtain 81 times cultivation speed instead of the normal 9 times cultivation speed of the Emperor of the Fate dynasty. Moreover, don't forget what Yi Chen had just obtained. A large number of invincible jade slips. With the invincible jade slips and a large number of powerful tools, it would be difficult for Yi Chen's reincarnation Immortal City's army to not ascend to the heavens and become immortals immediately. It could be said that once Yi Chen, who had accumulated a lot of wealth, ascended to the immortal realm, there would be a super explosion. At that time, whether it was Yi Chen, who had accumulated a lot of experience and innate attribute points, or Yi Chen's army, they would all rise strongly. Although this wouldn't allow Yi Chen and his army to become invincible and sweep across the untainted land, it would allow Yi Chen to become an existence that ordinary mighty figures wouldn't dare to provoke easily. This was just the beginning. As time passed, 10 years, or even hundreds of years, Yi Chen's reincarnation dynasty would continue to advance, and Yi Chen's realm would soar rapidly. In addition, after refining innate spiritual treasures and innate cardinal treasures, Yi Chen's combat strength would catch up to Di Jun or Tai's. Of course, this was only about catching up in strength. It didn't mean that after Yi Chen ascended to the immortal realm, he would directly confront the demon clan. Yi Chen wouldn't make such a choice if he could, at least not for the time being. After all, rising strongly didn't mean that he was invincible, and it didn't mean that he could crush the demon clan. If Yi Chen really clashed head-on with the fiend race, he would definitely let the great desolate realm's fiend race have a taste of what pain and fear were. But Yi Chen's reincarnation dynasty would also suffer unimaginable damage because of this. For example, the reincarnation dynasty would be destroyed because of this. Or, the reincarnation dynasty would collapse because of this. Regardless of which it was not the result that Yi Chen wanted to see. Therefore, it was impossible for Yi Chen to directly clash head-on with the fiend race after his nation ascended. But even so, Yi Chen could still help Changxi and Shiha. To be more precise, Yi Chen had already decided that after the entire nation ascended to the Eldritch world, he would contact Changxi and Shihi through the Lunar Rabbit and bring the 2 goddesses of the Eldritch world directly to the reincarnation Immortal City. Once Changxi and Shiha arrived at Yi Chen's reincarnation Immortal City, even if the 3 Pure Ones or Hong Jun tried to divine their whereabouts, they wouldn't be able to find them. Don't forget that Yi Chen had the elusive one. With this, no matter who tried to divine Yi Chen or those related to Yi Chen, the result would be the same. It would be chaos. In this way, not to mention that Di Jun and Tai wouldn't spend a lot of time and energy attacking the lunar star, they wouldn't be able to find Changxi and Shiha after rushing into the lunar star. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to divine their whereabouts. This was enough. The lunar star in the untainted world. After confirming that all the devouring bone worms in the lunar osmanthus tree had been killed, Changxi and Shiha's eyes lit up. Then, they looked at the lunar rabbit at the same time. At this moment, Changxi and Shiha were excited. Of course, they were also confused. They didn't know where the lunar rabbit had found a godslayer. They also didn't know who the master the lunar rabbit had mentioned was. Sister Shiha, Sister Changxi, the lunar star is finally safe. After confirming that the lunar osmanthus tree had returned to normal, the lunar rabbit looked at the godslayer with gratitude. Then, she looked at Changxi and Shiha and shouted excitedly. When Changxi and Shiha heard this, they looked at each other and asked in unison, "Little rabbit, what's the master you mentioned?" Chapter 1057. Changshi and Shiha had many questions. They didn't ask before because they had no choice, but now that the crisis of the lunar star had been resolved, the two of them naturally couldn't continue to keep their questions in their hearts. In fact, they couldn't be blamed for being so puzzled. After all, the lunar rabbit obtained the lunar star with the Khanate cardinal treasure godslayer. If this wasn't enough to agitate Changshi and Shiha, then the matter of the lunar rabbit recognizing a master was more than enough. What kind of existence was the lunar rabbit? It was also a creature born from the lunar star. Whether it was its background or status, it was incomparable to ordinary divine beasts. Although the lunar rabbit could choose an existence to recognize as its master, this wasn't something that could be done casually. The lunar rabbit, on the other hand, had a new master after leaving the lunar star. Most importantly, the master mentioned by the lunar rabbit seemed to be the owner of the god-killing spear that countless mighty figures have been searching for but failed to find. He was also the destined husband of Shihi and Changshi. Of course, this came from the lunar rabbit, but the problem was that both Shiha and Changshi heard it and couldn't ignore it. Therefore, the two of them asked the question in their hearts. After hearing Changshi and Shia's question, the lunar rabbit smiled playfully and then said, "Big sister Changshi, big sister Shiha, master is your destined husband." When Shiha heard this, she glared at the lunar rabbit and said, "Little rabbit, speak properly. What's going on?" When the lunar rabbit heard this, she stuck out her tongue and then said, "Big sister Changshi, big sister Shiha, master's name is Yichun. He's still in the lower realm and hasn't come to the eldritch world." As soon as the lunar rabbit finished speaking, Changshi and Shihi were both stunned on the spot. Then their eyes widened. When they heard the lunar rabbit call him master, their first reaction was that the lunar rabbit had found a mighty figure in the eldritch world and recognized him as her master. At that time, because the lunar rabbit had taken out the god slayer, the two of them didn't delve into it, let alone ask. Now, they naturally couldn't continue to ignore this question. But in the end, what did they hear? The lunar rabbit's master wasn't a mighty figure in the eldritch world at all, but from the lower realm. What kind of place was the lower realm? How could Changshi and Shiha not know? Even the weakest existence in the great desolate world could not compare to the living beings there. But it was the creatures of this world that became the master of the lunar rabbit. How could Changshi and Shiha, who had confirmed this, not be shocked? How could they not be stunned? This result was completely beyond their expectations. Seeing Changshi and Shihi's shocked expressions, the lunar rabbit smiled mischievously and said, "Big sister Changshi, big sister Shiha, little rabbit doesn't recognize a master for no reason." When Changshi and Shihi heard this, they both returned to their senses and looked at each other, waiting for an explanation from the lunar rabbit. When the lunar rabbit saw this, she deliberately coughed and then said, "Elder sister Changshi, elder sister Shiha, it's true that master came from the lower realm. However, master has great luck. Most importantly, master refined not only the lunar primordial fire, but also the solar primordial fire as a mortal." When Changshi heard this, her pupils constricted and she said in shock, "That's right. How can a mortal refine the lunar primordial fire and the solar primordial fire?" Little rabbit, you're not lying to us? Did your master really refine the lunar primordial fire and the solar primordial fire as a mortal? She walked up to the lunar rabbit, grabbed its hand, and asked seriously, "What's the matter?" It was obvious that what the lunar rabbit said shocked Changshi and Shihi. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like this. When the lunar rabbit heard Changshi's shock and Shi's question, she nodded seriously and said, "It's true. It's true, big sister Shiha, big sister Changshi, I won't lie." When Changshi and Shihi heard the lunar rabbit's serious words, their eyes widened in unison. Then, they revealed an expression of disbelief. At this moment, the lunar rabbit continued, "If it's just because of this, little rabbit won't recognize a master so casually. Little rabbit can't say the specific reason, or will affect master. However, big sisters, think about it. Not only did master refine the lunar primordial fire and the solar primordial fire as a mortal, but he also obtained this spear and another lotus treasure. What does this mean? The specific reason that the lunar rabbit mentioned was naturally that Yi Chun had the escaped one on him. It was nothing to talk about this on Earth, but if they ran to the primordial world and talked about it casually, there was a high chance that the heavenly Tao and the mighty figures of the primordial world would sense it. And if this possibility really became a reality, then Yi Chun would definitely encounter endless danger as long as he ascended to the primordial world. Looking at it, everyone was somewhat dumbfounded. How could a single sentence bring about such a huge disaster? But that was the truth. One had to know that not only the mighty figures of the primordial world wanted the escaped one, but even Tao ancestor Hong Jun and demon ancestor Rao, who had been dead for many years, wanted it. Even the heavenly Tao of the primordial world wanted the escaped one to supplement itself. Therefore, as long as the news that Yi Chun had the escaped one was leaked, then Yi Chun would definitely face the attacks of countless mighty figures, including Hong Jun and even the heavenly Tao the moment he ascended to the primordial world. This was not a joke, but a fact. After all, the escaped one was worth the mighty figures of the primordial world, Hong Jun, or the heavenly Tao, doing so. It was also because of this reason that the lunar rabbit knew that Yi Chun had the escaped one, but did not mention it. When Changshi and Shihi heard this, they were stunned. After a short moment of daze, the two girls looked at each other, then looked at the lunar rabbit and asked, "Little rabbit, are you saying that other than this spear, he also has Shihi and Chang?" she asked in shock. As soon as they landed, the lunar rabbit hurriedly raised a finger and gestured for them to be silent. Then, she nodded seriously. When Changshi saw this, she instantly understood something and her eyes constricted. "This is really—" Changshi's words came to an abrupt halt. At the side, she exhaled deeply and then looked at the lunar rabbit. "Little rabbit, if I didn't hear wrongly, what you said before was that you were matchmaking me and my sister." "That's right, big sister Shia. Master is a rich husband with a limitless future. If we don't hurry up and settle down with such a good husband, it'll be too late to regret it if he's snatched away by someone else." The lunar rabbit giggled and nodded. Changshi and Shihi blushed after hearing the lunar rabbit's words. It was obvious that the two girls were embarrassed by the lunar rabbit's words. After a short silence, Changshi and Shihi looked at the lunar rabbit and asked, "What did he say? How did he answer?" "Sister Changshi, Sister Shihi, why are you so stupid? Master already told me to bring this back to the lunar star. Isn't the answer already obvious?" When the lunar rabbit heard this, she rolled her eyes at Changshi and Shihi helplessly. Chapter 1058. As soon as the rabbit finished speaking, Changshi and Shihi blushed again. Then the two of them moved and instantly arrived beside the rabbit. Then they pinched the rabbit's ears from both sides. Big sister, little rabbit was wrong. Don't pinch me." Sensing that her rabbit ears were being pinched, the lunar rabbit begged for mercy without thinking. Changshi and Shihi rolled their eyes at the lunar rabbit and let go of its ears. In the next second, Shiha regained her composure. She looked straight at the lunar rabbit and said in a slightly reproachful tone, "Little rabbit, you've learned to make your own decisions. Even if he has refined the true fire of the sun and is compatible with us, we don't know him and have never seen him before. How do you know if we will like him?" "That's right, little bunny. You shouldn't be so careless. You'll make him think that I still have an older sister, that I'm very eager to get married, and that I'm a love-struck fool." Changshi added seriously when she heard this. As soon as Changshi finished speaking, Shia's face froze. The lunar rabbit giggled and stuck out her tongue. "Sister Changshi, Sister Shiha, Master is very handsome. What Dejuan? What Tai? They don't even deserve to carry Master's shoes. If you two see Master, you will be very satisfied." At this point, the lunar rabbit suddenly thought of something and hurriedly added, "Elder Sister Changshi, Elder Sister Shiha, Master has refined the solar primordial flame. You two are a match made in heaven. Even if you haven't seen Master before, you can't change this fact. Furthermore, Master has never even met you two sisters before. Just by listening to Little Rabbit, he is willing to take out this to help the Moonstar. Sisters, aren't you touched? When Changshi heard this, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she rolled her eyes at the Lunar Rabbit and said, "Of course I'm touched. However, they haven't even met yet, and they've already decided on their status. This is too fast." She had nodded in agreement. When the Lunar Rabbit saw this, she stomped her foot angrily. "All right, I'll go back now and tell Master that the two sisters aren't willing to marry Master, so Master can give up. Damned Rabbit, are you looking for a beating?" When Changshi heard the Lunar Rabbit's words, she grabbed the Lunar Rabbit's arm and said anxiously. When the Lunar Rabbit saw this, a crafty look flashed through its eyes. At this moment, Changshi, who was holding the Lunar Rabbit's arm, suddenly realized something. Her face couldn't help but redden. She coughed a few times and said, "Well, anyway, it can't be so soon. Even if I'm destined to marry him, it can't be so soon. Big Sister Changshi, it's not up to you to decide whether it's fast or not. Master has already said that from today onwards, the astral guardian array of the lunar star must remain open until Master personally arrives. I reckon that at that time, Master will directly take the two of you away." The Lunar Rabbit chuckled and said, "He's coming to the lunar star? When are you coming?" Shihi's eyes lit up when she heard this. She hurriedly looked at the Lunar Rabbit and asked. After hearing Shihi's question, the Lunar Rabbit thought for a moment and said, "It shouldn't be long. Master has already reached the peak of the crossing calamity stage, and his body contains a huge amount of energy. I reckon that Master has something to do. When he's done, Master will ascend to the untainted world. At that time, Master will definitely come directly to the lunar star and take the two of you away." When Changshi and Shihi heard this, they looked at each other and blushed. At this moment, the Lunar Rabbit suddenly thought of something and said, "By the way, Big Sister Big Sister Shihi, Master doesn't like it. The two of you usually don't wear clothes. This habit must be changed. Even if no one comes to the lunar star, you can't do that." When Changshi and Shihi heard this, they were so angry that their faces turned red. "Damned Rabbit, why did you tell him everything?" After the two of them shouted, they directly grabbed one of the Lunar Rabbit's ears and twisted it hard without thinking. I'll go to Master first and return this to him." As soon as the Lunar Rabbit finished speaking with a smile, the Lunar Rabbit instantly turned into starlight that filled the sky and then disappeared. Yichen did not see this scene on the lunar star. If he saw it, Yichen would immediately have a very clear judgment. That was, the Lunar Rabbit had the potential to be a matchmaker. Earth, Eastern Region, Reincarnation City. Starlight suddenly gathered in the backyard of the city lord's mansion. Then, the Lunar Rabbit, who had left not long ago, appeared directly here. Yi Chun, who was accompanying the girls in the pavilion, saw this and could not help but smile. At this moment, the Lunar Rabbit, who had just appeared here, directly bowed to Yi Chun respectfully and said, "Greetings, Master." When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with a smile and then asked, "Did everything go well?" "Did things go well?" "Master, things went very well. There were no setbacks. The God-Slayer killed the devouring bone worm with one blow," the Lunar Rabbit hurriedly said. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with satisfaction. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the God-Slayer in the Lunar Rabbit's hand, and the 12 connate copper men of destiny floating around the Lunar Rabbit instantly flew to Yi Chun and disappeared. At this moment, the Lunar Rabbit looked at Yi Chun, Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, and the other girls around him, then bowed to Yi Chun and said, "Master, Sister Changshi and Sister Shihi are very much in favor of your marriage. Please ascend to the Eldritch world as soon as possible and marry them." Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, the 5 Zhenmi sisters, Big and Small Qiao, Philos Aureus, and Empress Hari. Every one of them was not inferior to Changshi and Shihi in terms of looks. If Yi Chun did not ascend for a long time, it was very likely that he would completely ignore Changshi and Shihi, whom he had yet to meet because of Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Cayenne. This was what the lunar rabbit was worried about. Otherwise, she would not have asked Yi Chun to ascend to the eldritch world as soon as possible. After hearing the lunar rabbit's words, Yi Chun was stunned for a moment. Then, he realized what the lunar rabbit meant. The lunar rabbit was worried that I would ignore Chang Shi and Shi He because of Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Cayenne. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but smile and say, I will ascend to the eldritch world. I will definitely ascend to the great desolate Ian. I will not wait for long. However, I have to wait until I'm done with my matters. Yes, Master. After hearing Yi Chen's affirmative answer, the lunar rabbit immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to him. Seeing this, Yi Chen shook his head helplessly and said, Take 2 things back. Bring 2 things back and give them to Shi He and Chang Shi. Chapter 10:59. After saying that, Yi Chun waved his right hand, and 2 treasure-level rings and 2 void stones appeared in Yi Chen's right hand. The lunar rabbit was stunned when she saw this. Master was going to refine storage rings. Thinking of this, the lunar rabbit could not help but look at the storage rings on the fingers of Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Cayenne, and Mi Jun. Then, her eyes lit up. At this moment, Yi Chun, the master of the lunar rabbit, would not ignore Chang Shi and Shi He just because he had never seen them before. This thought directly appeared in the lunar rabbit's mind. It was no wonder that the lunar rabbit thought this way. After all of Yi Chen's women, whether it was Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Mi Jun, Cayenne, or even the 3-year-old Lolita, Empress Hari, and Nana, all wore a storage ring personally refined by Yi Chun. What did this mean? It was very simple. It symbolized the status of Yi Chen's women. Originally, the lunar rabbit was worried that Yi Chun would give up the idea of marrying Chang Shi and Shi He because he had not seen Chang Shi and Shi He and had not ascended to the untainted land for a long time. But now, it seemed that her idea was superfluous. If Yi Chun would do this, he would not refine storage rings that could only be worn by Yi Chen's women for Chang Shi and Shi He. Thinking of this, the lunar rabbit relaxed completely. Yi Chun, who had just taken out the 2 treasure-level rings and the void stone, looked at the mischievous lunar rabbit and sighed secretly. Then, with a thought, the sun primordial fire appeared in his right hand and burned the 2 treasure-level rings and the void stone into liquid. After a few breaths of time, 2 ancient yet extraordinarily exquisite storage rings formed in the air above Yi Chen's right palm. Seeing this, Yi Chen nodded satisfactorily. Then, with a thought, the sun primordial fire in his right hand was extinguished instantly. At the same time, the lunar primordial fire appeared in Yi Chen's right hand with a whoosh and then disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the 2 storage rings, which were originally boiling hot, cooled down instantly. Looking at the 2 newly refined storage rings in his hand, Yi Chen's mind moved. 200,000 enlightenment stones, 20,000 enlightenment tea leaves, 3 god-level youth-retaining fruits, a large number of spiritual fruits, and a rare treasure tea set, and other items instantly flew out of the small world. Then, they split into 2 halves and flew into the 2 storage rings. When there was only 1 god-level youth-retaining fruit left, Yi Chun picked up the 2 storage rings and the god-level youth-retaining fruit and handed them to the lunar rabbit. The lunar rabbit, who had never seen the enlightenment stones and enlightenment tea leaves before, but could sense that they were extraordinary from the enlightenment stones and enlightenment tea leaves, took the storage rings with a dumbfounded expression. Then, she came back to her senses and saw the god-level youth-retaining fruit that she had taken along with them. Master, this is... At this moment, the lunar rabbit was actually very excited, but she wasn't too sure. This was because she had seen Yi Chun take out 3 god-level youth-retaining fruits from the very beginning. Chang Shi and Shi He only needed to eat 2 to maintain their youthful looks. They didn't need a 3rd at all. Therefore, this 3rd god-level youth-retaining fruit was most likely for her, the lunar rabbit. However, the lunar rabbit wasn't sure because she hadn't done anything for Yi Chun. Not only had she not done anything, but it was Yi Chun, her master, who had helped her, Shi He, Chang'e, and the lunar star. It was also because of this reason that the lunar rabbit asked Yi Chun with excitement and confusion. After hearing the lunar rabbit's expectant question, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile and say, "The god-level youth-retaining fruit is for Chang'e and Chang'e. The rings are for Chang'e and Shihe. This god-level youthful fruit is for you. Eat it." The god-level youth-retaining fruit didn't have much effect on cultivation, but even so, it was one of the treasures that all women loved. This was because after eating the god-level youth-retaining fruit, one would remain youthful forever and never grow old. At first glance, it seemed very ridiculous. How could immortals grow old? The truth was that immortals really did grow old. This was because immortals' unlimited lifespan was only relative to ordinary people. However, the truth was that immortals would also grow old. As long as they hadn't proven their Tao and become a sage, no matter what realm they were at, they wouldn't be able to escape the 5 decay of the celestial being. After that, immortals would slowly grow old and eventually die. And this time could be millions of years, tens of millions of years, or even hundreds of millions of years, or even longer. However, no matter how long it was, this process would always exist. It could be said that as long as one didn't prove their Tao and become a sage, they would always be ants and would never be able to escape the 5 decay of the celestial being. And this also led to a situation where even immortals would grow old. If this happened to male immortals, perhaps no one would care about it. But if it happened to female immortals, not many could ignore it. It was also for this reason that heavenly materials and earthly treasures that could preserve one's youth were extremely lethal to female deities. It was also because of this that the lunar rabbit was so excited and even a little confused, because her master, Yi Chun, had really given her a god-level youth-retaining fruit. This seemed very unrealistic. It was just a god-level youth-retaining fruit. Was it worth being so excited? The truth was that it was indeed worth the lunar rabbit's excitement. Because of the countless heavenly treasures in the eldritch world, the god-level youth-retaining fruit was not only extremely rare, but also pitifully few in number. And this also led to very few people eating the god-level youth-retaining fruit. Even the powerhouses of the eldritch world were no exception. And the lunar rabbit was no exception. In fact, it wasn't just her. Even Chang'e, and she had only heard of the god-level youth-retaining fruit, but had never encountered or eaten it. "Thank you, Master." After the lunar rabbit finished speaking excitedly, it ate the god-level face-retaining fruit without hesitation. When Yichen saw this, he couldn't help but smile. Then he said, "The Ewing star is very cold. The lunar star is bitterly cold. Before I ascend, Shiha and Chang'e can't leave the lunar star. Tell them that they can use the enlightenment stones in their rings when they cultivate. As for when they're not cultivating, they can drink tea and eat fruits. All right, you should drink this tea too. It's good for you." The enlightenment tea's effect was to allow one to have an epiphany. It could also give one a chance to revive after drinking a piece. It was a top treasure, not inferior to connate spirit treasures or connate cardinal treasures. Otherwise, Yichen wouldn't have told the lunar rabbit to drink the tea too, because as long as the lunar rabbit drank the enlightenment tea, it was equivalent to having an extra life. If the lunar rabbit drank enough Tao comprehension tea, then the life of the lunar rabbit would increase accordingly. The more she drank, the more life she would gain. This was the perverse part of the enlightenment tea. It was also the reason why Yi Chun had given the enlightenment tea to Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, and his subordinates directly after obtaining it. After all, the eldritch world was too dangerous. It was necessary to be prepared in advance. This way, Yi Chun would be more at ease when he went out to battle. Chapter 1060. After hearing Yi Chen's words, the lunar rabbit felt a warm current in her heart. In the next second, the lunar rabbit solemnly bowed to Yi Chun and said, "Thank you. Thank you for your reward, Master." Little Rabbit swears to follow Master to death. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "That's right. All right, go back early. This world isn't suitable for you to stay in for long." Yes, master. When the lunar rabbit heard this, she nodded heavily and bowed. Just as the lunar rabbit got up, she suddenly thought of something and hurriedly looked at Yi-chun. Master, that. Seeing the lunar rabbit's bashful appearance, Yi-chun couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Master, can you cook again? Big sister Changshi and big sister Shiha haven't eaten master's food yet. The lunar rabbit hesitated for a moment, then bit her lip and said. When Yi-chun heard this, he was slightly taken aback. Then he glared at the lunar rabbit. That's it. When the lunar rabbit saw Yi-chun's expression, her heart couldn't help but tighten. Then she hurriedly bowed and said, Master, please don't be angry. Little rabbit just wants master's food to be too delicious. I want big sister Changshi and big sister Shiha to try it too. I'm not blaming you. Why are you so afraid? When Yi-chun saw the lunar rabbit's incomparably nervous appearance, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then he glared at the lunar rabbit and said. When the lunar rabbit heard this, she was first stunned, then let out a long sigh. Master, I'm not worried that because of little rabbit's big mouth, big sister Changshi and big sister Shiha will leave a bad impression with master. When Yi-chun heard the lunar rabbit's words, he glanced at it and then directly smacked its head. You're really scheming to find a little rabbit. However, you don't have to worry about this or that in the future. As far as your master is concerned, whoever I've decided on is my woman, then she is. No one can take her away from me, and I won't let them suffer any grievances. Do you understand? Yes. Hearing this, the lunar rabbit's eyes lit up. Then she nodded excitedly. When Yi-chun saw this, he couldn't help but smile. Then he looked at Zhao Yu, Diao-chan, Kai-yin, Mi-jun, and the other girls. I'll go make some dishes for Little Rabbit to take away. You guys take Nana to choose a room first. Yes, husband. When Zhao Yu, Diao-chan, Kai-yin, Mi-jun, Huang Yuang, Philos Aureus, and Jun-mi, the five sisters did Xiao and Xiao Qiao heard this, they all nodded in agreement. When the girls finished speaking, they got up and left the pavilion with the 3-year-old Loli, Empress Hari, and Nana. Yi-chun glanced at the girls who left, then went straight to the kitchen. Not long after, the fragrance of the dishes that had just faded floated from the city lord's mansion again and then spread out. On the streets of Samsara City, the female players of Beauty Alliance who had been lured away by the fragrance of the dishes couldn't help but twitch their noses again. It's here again. It smells so good. I really want to eat it. An extremely tall and beautiful woman in her 20s said hopefully after swallowing a mouthful of saliva with a gudong sound. I want to eat it too, but the fragrance is coming from the city lord's mansion. We can't just go in. Also, master's guards won't let us in. A girl who looked like a model said helplessly. Say, where do you think master found such a chef? His culinary skills are simply too good. Who knows where he found this chef, but I want to learn. If I can learn it, I'll be able to cook for master. Little wench, you're so cunning. I can't believe you have such thoughts. Don't scratch me. I'm ticklish. Really, I don't believe that you don't have such thoughts. Of course we do. Don't you know that there's a saying that if you want to capture a man's heart, you have to capture his stomach first? The female players of Beauty's Alliance were attracted to the street by the aroma of Yi-chun's cooking. Because of the aroma, Li Mingyao, who was also attracted by the aroma, hesitated for a moment. She then looked at Hu Xiaoye and the little loli named Meng Meng, who had been following Li Mingyao around. Big Sis Xiaoyao, why don't we pay a visit to master? The little loli saw Li Mingyao's gaze and said after biting her lips. When Hu Xiaoye heard the little loli's words, she glanced at the city lord's mansion and nodded seriously. They also wanted to have a taste of the delicacy that made their souls tremble. Even a glance was fine. Of course, they wanted to learn this cooking skill even more. This was because they also knew the saying, if you want to capture a man's heart, you have to capture his stomach first. As for before, they were hesitant because they were afraid that this would make Yi-chun unhappy. When Li Mingyao saw this, she couldn't help but bite her lips and make a decision. Okay, let's pay a visit to master. Yes, this is a necessary etiquette. Master won't blame us. Li Mengyao had always wanted to get close to Yi Chun and stay by Yi Chen's side at all times. And now, her wish had been realized. She and her sisters had all moved into Reincarnation City and lived in the same city as Yi Chun. But this still didn't count as staying by Yi Chen's side. She wanted to take the next step. And now, a chance for her to get closer to Yi Chun had appeared. She didn't want to give up. She wanted to grab hold of it. After Li Mengyao finished speaking, she mustered up her courage and led Hu Xiaoye and the little lowly, named Meng Meng, toward the City Lord Mansion. When the female players of the Beauties Alliance saw this, they were all stunned and immediately stopped discussing. At this moment, the thought of following them to the City Lord's mansion appeared in everyone's mind. Unfortunately, they could only appear. They couldn't act because of this thought. As for the reason, it was very simple. Although they had become Yi Chen's slaves and moved into Reincarnation City, they couldn't act recklessly or willfully because of this. Of course, the most important thing was that they knew that Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng had a reason to visit Yi Chun. This was because the three of them were the management of the Beauties Alliance. Ordinary members like them had no reason to visit Yi Chun. Otherwise, they would definitely attract Yi Chen's dissatisfaction and even disgust. This wasn't the result they wanted to see. The female players of the Beauties Alliance looked at Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng Meng. The Reincarnation Immortal City soldiers arranged by Zhou Tsang at the City Lord's mansion raised their spears and pointed them at Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly who were walking toward the City Lord's mansion. Without the Lord's order, don't approach without permission. The soldier captain's shout startled Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly instantly. At this moment, the thought of they were wrong involuntarily appeared in their minds. At this moment, Yi Chen's voice suddenly sounded. Let them in. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the Reincarnation Immortal City soldiers on duty at the City Lord's mansion turned around and bowed to the City Lord's mansion. Yes, my lord. Chapter 1061. The soldiers on duty at the gate of the City Lord's mansion put away their weapons and stood quietly to the side, no longer looking at Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng Meng. Hu Xiaoye, Li Mengyao, and the little lowly all breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this. To be honest, they were extremely worried when they were reprimanded by the soldiers on duty at Reincarnation Immortal City. Of course, it wasn't that they were worried about being killed by the soldiers on the spot. They were worried that their master, Yi Chun, would be angry at them for acting on their own. After all, they didn't receive Yi Chen's summons, but they went to the City Lord's mansion without permission. This was against the rules. Even if their purpose was to visit Yi Chun, it was still the same. But now, they were completely at ease because Yi Chun had directly given the order to let them enter the residence. After looking at each other, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and a little lowly named Meng Meng went to the City Lord's mansion together. Did Yi Chun know why they came to the City Lord mansion? Did he know their purpose? Of course he did. No one knew better than Yi Chun, who had searched the souls and memories of all the female players in Beauties Alliance, what they were thinking. To be more precise, all the female players in Beauties Alliance wanted to stay by Yi Chen's side. They even wanted to become Yi Chen's women. All of them had the same thought, without exception. Of course, the female players in Beauties Alliance didn't think this way to climb up the ranks, nor did they want to borrow Yi Chen's strength or power to seek something. They just wanted it from the bottom of their hearts. Since Yi Chen knew what all the female players in Beauties Alliance were thinking, but he still let Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the others enter the City Lord's mansion. Did Yi Chen want to take them in and make them Yi Chen's women? Of course not. There was only one reason why Yi Chun let Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng Meng enter the City Lord's mansion. That was to pass down the culinary Tao. Because of Empress Hari, Yi Chun had removed the soul seal that Yi Fan had placed on him in his previous life. He had awakened the memories of the god of cooking and regained all the culinary skills of the god of cooking. After that, Yi Chun displayed his skills and cooked for Empress Hari, Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Cayenne, and other girls. He unexpectedly became the culinary master. With this title, Culinary Dao's is culinary Dao, yes, culinary Dao's culinary skills, and culinary cooking, culinary skills, culinaries. Yi lords, Mengmeng's lords, lord, and in Meng, and the little. To be more precise, Yi Chen wanted to pass down his culinary skills to Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng. As for Yi Chen, he didn't pass down his culinary skills to the maids in Reincarnation Immortal City. It wasn't because Yi Chen was stingy, nor was it because Yi Chen didn't want to pass down his culinary skills. It was because the supreme culinary Dao's fourth characteristic, Dao of comprehension, was very abnormal. Even if the ordinary maids received Yi Chen's culinary skills and comprehended the supreme culinary's fourth characteristic, they wouldn't be able to unleash the power of the fourth characteristic. Because the supreme culinary's fourth characteristic, Dao comprehension, meant that there was a chance for people to comprehend the great Dao when they cooked, and the great Dao they comprehended would be related to the supreme culinary's great Dao. Who was the supreme culinary? Of course, it was Yi Chen, the one and only in the myriad worlds. The successor who comprehended the supreme culinary's fourth characteristic could cook for others and allow others to comprehend the great Dao that Yi Chen comprehended. What a joke. If the great Dao could be comprehended so easily, it would be too worthless. Yi Chen didn't think that the great Dao he knew would be passed down by the person who obtained the culinary inheritance through cooking. This point could be easily seen from the description of the probability attribute. To be more precise, this fourth characteristic was actually exclusive to Yi Chen. If it wasn't Yi Chen who cooked, it was useless no matter who cooked. It was impossible to let others comprehend the great Dao that Yi Chen knew. If there had to be an exception, it would be that the successor who comprehended the fourth characteristic had comprehended a great Dao. Then, this person might have the ability to pass down the great Dao that he knew through cooking. Of course, this was Yi Chen's speculation. The specifics had yet to be determined. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chen wanted to pass down his culinary skills to Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng. Then, through them, he would do a verification. One had to know that all the female players in the Beauties Alliance had their fates turned upside down because of Yi Chen. In the future, they could at least become Daluo Jinxian. It was very normal for such existences to comprehend some great Dao on their own. If one of the three of them managed to comprehend the fourth characteristic of the supreme culinary Dao, and, as Yi Chen speculated, they could really make others comprehend the great Dao they knew through cooking. Then, Yi Chen would let them cook for his subordinates whenever they were free. To be more precise, Yi Chen's real purpose was to verify. If the verification was successful, then Yi Chen's subordinates would benefit from it, and their strength would increase greatly. After all, the battles in the Eldritch world not only depended on one's strength, equipment, and cultivation methods, but also how many great Dao laws one had comprehended. At first glance, it didn't make sense. One had to know that Yi Chen's subordinates were now much more powerful than the female players in the Beauties Alliance. There was no need for them to eat the food they cooked and comprehend great Dao laws. However, the problem was that Yi Chen's subordinates were natives from the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. No matter how high their realms were, they weren't players. With such an identity, it was destined that Yi Chen's subordinates would never be able to surpass all the other players except Yi Chen. Moreover, the female players in the Beauties Alliance who had become Yi Chen's slaves and moved into Samsara City couldn't be compared to the players outside. They would definitely rise under Yi Chen's wings and quickly surpass Yi Chen's subordinates. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chen wanted to verify it. If he succeeded, Yi Chen would gain a lot of benefits. If he didn't succeed, Yi Chen wouldn't lose anything. At most, he would just waste a few words of time. As soon as Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng entered the Castellan Manor, a maidservant came up to them and said, "Lord you of Beach is in the kitchen right now. Please follow me." "Okay, thank you." Li Mingyao glanced at the maidservant and hurriedly said, "Okay, thank you." At this moment, whether it was Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, or the little lowly named Meng Meng, all had a sour and inferior feeling in their hearts. They couldn't be blamed for having such thoughts because the maidservant who came to greet them was no worse than them in terms of looks and figure. As they walked forward, the aroma grew stronger and stronger. It was pleasant and refreshing. Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Ming's sour feelings were quickly dispelled by the aroma of the food. After 10 minutes, the three girls followed the maidservant to the outside of the Castellan Manor's kitchen. When they saw that the person who was busy cooking was actually Yi Chun, all of them immediately opened their eyes wide. Chapter 1062. Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and the little lowly named Meng Meng had all guessed who the person who made the dishes that could shake one's soul was. However, they never thought that the person who made the dishes would be their master, the number one player, Yi Chun. After being stunned for a moment, Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng came back to their senses and hurriedly bowed to Yi Chun. "Greetings, master." Yi Chun nodded when he heard this. Then he put away the last dish that he had prepared for Chang Shi and Shiha and placed it on a plate. When Little Rabbit saw this, she hurriedly put the last dish that had just come out of the pot into her storage space. She did this naturally to keep it fresh and warm. This was the only way that it would look the same as when it had just come out of the pot when she returned to the lunar star. After putting away the last dish, the lunar rabbit glanced at Li Mingyao and the others who had come to the kitchen. Then she looked straight at Yi Chun and said, "Master, I've returned." "Master, Little Rabbit is going back. You have to come back soon." "Okay." Yi Chun nodded with a smile and said, "Okay." After a smack, the lunar rabbit that had sneakily kissed Yi Chun smiled playfully. Then she released her golden immortal aura for a second before turning into starlight and disappearing without a trace. Yi Chun touched the spot where the lunar rabbit had secretly kissed him. After being stunned for a moment, he shook his head helplessly. This rabbit was quite good at showing off. The lunar rabbit had deliberately kissed Yi Chun to show off her strength. In fact, it was for Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng to see. It was Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Ming's fault for calling Yi Chun master the moment they arrived. This title more or less provoked the lunar rabbit. This was something that could not be helped. Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng could not compare to the lunar rabbit in terms of strength, appearance, or background. However, they also addressed Yi Chun as master, just like the lunar rabbit. Thinking of this, Yi Chun looked straight at Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng, who were sweating profusely and trembling nonstop because of the Grandine rabbit's golden immortal pressure. "I'll let you in because I want to teach you culinary skills. Are you willing to learn?" When Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng heard this, they were all stunned. Then, they hurriedly tried to stabilize their hearts, which were beating violently because of the lunar rabbit's golden immortal pressure. In the next second, the three of them spoke in unison. "Master, we are willing." When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "That's right. However, you must remember one thing. Without my permission, you are not to cook for anyone outside of Samsara City." Yi Chun was the supreme culinary master. If he passed on his culinary skills to Li Mingyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng, they would definitely comprehend one of the supreme culinary master's characteristics. No matter which characteristic they would comprehend in the end, it would more or less benefit the people who ate their food. Yi Chun did not want to see such a thing happen. As for why Yi Chun specifically pointed this out, it was because before the Beauties Alliance became Yi Chun's slave, they were one of the player factions. Such existences would more or less have some connections. It was not a big deal if their relationship was ordinary, but it was a different story if their relationship was good. Of course, the Beauties Alliance, which had signed a slave contract with Yi Chun and swore to follow Yi Chun to death, would definitely not sponsor those people behind Yi Chun's back. However, This did not prevent the Beauty's alliance from entertaining those who were close to them with meals, which was the most common method. After all, it was just a meal. But the truth was, as long as Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng received Yi Chen's culinary skills inheritance, the food they cooked would no longer be ordinary. It would be food that could help players adjust their bodies, speed up their cultivation, and even help them break through bottlenecks. It could not be helped. The Supreme Culinary Master's characteristics were so overbearing and perverse. It was also for this reason that Yi Chen specifically pointed this out. Whether it was selfish or self-interested, Yi Chen did not have the thought of giving away benefits for free. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. After Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng heard Yi Chen's words, they were slightly stunned. Then, they hurriedly bowed and said loudly, "Yes, Master." At this moment, the three girls could not help but feel that Yi Chen's culinary skills were extraordinary. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have said this to them. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction. Then, he raised his right hand and pointed at the air 3 times. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 streams of information instantly shot out from Yi Chen's fingers and rapidly shot toward Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng. The moment the 3 streams of information touched the 3 girls' heads, they flashed and entered. Then, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng all fainted. The culinary skills inheritance contained a lot of information. It included ingredients, condiments, the control of various flames, the steps, and the details of each step. Apart from this, the culinary skills inheritance also included knife skills, cooking utensils, and how to use the utensils, as well as factors such as weather, environment, and so on. It could be said that the culinary skills inheritance contained a lot of information. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng, who had not yet reached the mortal evolution stage, received this information. It was hard not to faint. Yi Chen naturally knew this, but Yi Chen did not want to waste time. To be more precise, Yi Chen wanted to see what characteristics the 3 girls would learn as soon as possible. This way, Yi Chen could judge if he should find more female players from the Beauty Alliance to accept the culinary skills inheritance. Of course, Yi Chen knew that the 3 girls would faint from the information, but he still did this because Yi Chen was sure that the 3 girls would not lose their lives because of the massive amount of information. Otherwise, Yi Chen would definitely seal a portion of the culinary skills inheritance and pass it to the 3 girls. Time slowly passed. When the time for half an incense stick to burn was up, the 3 girls opened their eyes one after another and looked at Yi Chen in shock. When Yi Chen saw this, he smiled and asked, "What are you doing? What characteristics did you learn?" "Master, I learned the recuperation and Tao enlightenment characteristics." Li Mengyao hurriedly bowed when she heard Yi Chen's question. Reporting to Master, "I have comprehended the characteristics of neck laceration and Tao enlightenment." Hu Xiaoye bowed after Li Mengyao finished speaking. "Master, I learned the Tao enlightenment and medicinal cuisine characteristics," Meng Meng said shyly. When Yi Chen heard this, he was stunned. Holy shit! What's going on? How did the 3 of them learn 2 characteristics of the Supreme Chef? Moreover, they all had the Tao enlightenment characteristic. It was no wonder that Yi Chen was so confused. The 5th rule of the Supreme Chef's attribute description was to let people learn a random characteristic of the Supreme Chef. However, how many characteristics did Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Meng Meng learn? 2. Could it be that when the culinary skills were imparted to the players, they would be able to learn 2 characteristics of the Supreme Chef? Moreover, there must be the Tao enlightenment characteristic. No, it couldn't be like that, since the 5th characteristic was clearly stated that the person who received the inheritance would only learn 1 characteristic of the Supreme Chef. Then they could only learn 1. However, Li Mengyao and the others had indeed learned 2 characteristics, and both of them had the Tao enlightenment characteristic. Could it be? Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes widened. Holy shit! The Child of Destiny. It must be the Child of Destiny. Only the title of Child of Providence would erupt because of my thoughts, causing such a situation to occur. Chapter 1063. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Damn it. If that's the case, my previous judgment is 100% correct. When Yi Chen obtained the title of Supreme Culinary Tao, he immediately thought of passing down the Culinary Tao and creating a successor with the neck-breaking characteristic. Because of the neck-breaking characteristic, the soldiers and generals of Reincarnation Immortal City could easily break through the bottleneck and advance. This way, when others were working hard to break through the bottleneck, Yi Chen's subordinates would be advancing by leaps and bounds. What would happen after that? It was very simple. Yi Chen's generals and soldiers would leave all the enemies far behind. This was the reason why Yi Chen wanted to create a successor of the culinary path with a neck-breaking characteristic. At that time, Yi Chen thought that as long as he passed down the culinary Tao, there would definitely be a successor with a neck-breaking characteristic among the 100 people who obtained the culinary Tao. As for the reason, it was very simple. Yi Chen was the son of fortune. Whether it was in the newbie area or in the real world, Yi Chen was worthy of being called the number one person. With this, Yi Chen's luck would always be so abnormal that he would not have any friends. In this way, Yi Chen's idea of becoming the successor of the culinary path with the neck-breaking characteristic would not be met with any accidents. But even so, Yi Chen did not think that by passing down the culinary Tao, not only would it allow people to directly obtain two characteristics, but it would also allow Yi Chen to verify the fourth characteristic of the supreme culinary Tao, Tao comprehension. What did this mean? It was very simple. It meant that one's wish would come true. Good things came in pairs. What the F***CK, the blessing of the Son of Destiny, was too terrifying, but it felt good. Although it would not work for everything, it was good that it worked for now. Thinking of this, Yi Chen looked directly at Li Mengyao and said, "Bring another 97 people. Find another 97 people. I will impart the culinary arts to them." "Yes, master." When Li Mengyao heard this, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she hurriedly bowed and left the city lord's mansion. Hu Xiaoye, who had directly become the god of cooking because she had obtained the supreme culinary's inheritance, suddenly thought of something, and her expression changed. In the next second, Hu Xiaoye hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and asked, "Master, this culinary characteristic seems to be very useful. Who does Master want us to cook for?" As soon as Hu Xiaoye finished speaking, Meng Meng, who was at the side, immediately pricked up her ears and looked at Yi Chen with a serious and expectant expression, quietly waiting for Yi Chen's answer. Upon hearing Hu Xiaoye's question, Yi Chen glanced at Hu Xiaoye and said, "In the future, all of you will be cooking for my army and generals. In the beginning, you will only be cooking for people with a neck-breaking trait. In the future, it will depend on the situation." When Hu Xiaoye heard this, her face turned pale. Obviously, Yi Chen's answer wasn't what she wanted. Otherwise, she wouldn't be like this. "Master, can we only cook for Master?" After hesitating several times, Hu Xiaoye finally bit her lips and mustered her courage to say what she wanted to say. Obviously, in Hu Xiaoye's heart, she belonged to Yi Chen. She didn't want to cook for anyone other than Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard this, he was slightly taken aback. Then, he realized what Hu Xiaoye was thinking. Damn it. He had neglected the thoughts of these women from the Beauty Alliance after a moment of silence. Yi Chen directly looked at Li Mengyao, who had already arrived on the street, and said, "The order is cancelled. There is no need to look for anyone." Was Yi Chen really going to overturn the original plan because of Hu Xiaoye's words? It didn't exist. Because what Yi Chen wanted to do, in addition to eliminating the advancement bottleneck of his army, was to verify whether the successor of the Supreme Culinary Tao, who had comprehended the Great Tao Law, could unleash the fourth trait. The former was Yi Chen's main goal. In order to achieve this goal, Yi Chen only needed to find some maids and pass down the Culinary Tao to them. It was very simple and very rough. It couldn't be helped. After all, Yi Chen was the son of Providence. Moreover, Yi Chen had now further verified the perverse nature of the son of Providence. Therefore, Yi Chen's goal of eliminating the advancement bottleneck of his army was impossible to fail. As for Yi Chen's second goal, Yi Chun wanted to verify the supreme culinary Tao's fourth trait, Tao comprehension. If the verification was successful, the battle strength of Reincarnation Immortal City's army would be further strengthened. In order to achieve this, he had to find a chef who could at least advance to Daluo Jingxian. Only by finding such a chef could Yi Chun continue with his plan. Although giving up the Beauty Alliance to do this verification would make things a lot more troublesome, it was not impossible. What Yi Chun wanted to do was to specially train the maids. To be more precise, as long as Yi Chun's maids accepted the culinary Tao inheritance, Yi Chun would put in more effort to train them so that they could at least advance to Daluo Jingxian. At first glance, it seemed like nonsense. How could a maid be trained to become a Daluo Jingxian? Needless to say, it was really possible because Yi Chun really had such an ability. After all, Yi Chun was the emperor of the Fate dynasty that was about to be established soon. As long as Yi Chun gave the maids who accepted the culinary Tao inheritance, they would be able to increase their cultivation speed by several times. In addition, Yi Chun would put in a lot of effort to train them. It was impossible for them not to advance to Daluo Jingxian. After all, even the female players in the Beauty Alliance could advance to Daluo Jingxian because of Yi Chun. How could Yi Chun's maids, who were specially trained by him, not be able to do it? As for why Yi Chun chose the Beauty Alliance from the beginning, it was because he wanted to save time and effort. Unfortunately, Yi Chun ignored their thoughts. To be more precise, the female players in the Beauty Alliance only had Yi Chun in their hearts and wanted to become Yi Chun's woman. How could they like to cook for others? Of course, if Yi Chun forced them to do it, they would definitely obey. However, Yi Chun wouldn't do it even if he didn't think of it. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have told Li Mingyao that the order was cancelled. On the streets of Samsara City, Li Mingyao, who had just arrived near the female players of the Beauty Alliance, was stunned when she heard Yi Chun's words. She quickly turned around and bowed to the City Lord's mansion. Yes, Master. Outside the kitchen of the City Lord's mansion, hearing Yi Chun's order, Hu Xiaoya's face lit up with joy. She quickly bowed and said, "Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master." Meng Meng, who was at the side, let out a long breath. After that, she bowed to Yi Chun in an extremely excited manner. Yi Chun looked at Hu Xiaoya and Meng Meng and said, "You don't have to thank me. If you don't want to cook for the soldiers of Samsara City, you must cultivate hard and work hard for me. Also, after you ascend to the Eldritch world, do your best to search for treasures that can improve your bone frame." Yi Chun said this because he wanted the Beauty Alliance to pay the bill for them, and not the soldiers of Samsara City. To be more precise, the Beauty Alliance had to contribute to the maidservants that Yi Chun wanted to nurture. Although Yi Chun had shown mercy to the female players, he wouldn't put the female players of the Beauty Alliance on a pedestal just because of this. Yi Chun wouldn't do such a thing in the past, present, or future. "Yes, Master. Master." When Hu Xiaoya and Meng Meng heard this, they bowed and greeted Yi Chun loudly without hesitation. To them, they were willing to do anything for Yi Chun. However, they were unable to accept cooking for others for Yi Chun. And now, Yi Chun had canceled his order. This was the result that they wanted to see the most. Therefore, at this moment, Hu Xiaoya and Meng Meng heaved a sigh of relief deep in their hearts. And at the same time, they were extremely excited. This was because they could cook only for Yi Chun in the future. Chapter 1064. Yi Chun nodded after hearing Hu Xiaoya's and Meng Meng's surprised words. He then said, "When we go back, inform everyone that after breaking through to the mortal evolution state, they are not allowed to ascend. If they want to ascend, they have to ascend with me." Players who reached the mortal evolution state could ascend to the ancient world. This was the player's privilege and also the setting of the ancient world. If it was before Yi Chun took over Beauty's Alliance, it would have taken a long time for the female players to ascend to the heavens. Now, however, the female players of the Beauty Alliance all received a reward from Yi Chun. They received a Xiantian cultivation method and a set of spirit artifact grade equipment. With this, Regardless of whether they cultivated on their own or leveled up by killing monsters, they would be tens of times faster than other players. In addition, the female players of the Beauty Alliance were now living in Samsara City, where the spirit chi of heaven and earth was extremely dense. It would be hard for their power not to soar rapidly. This way, the female players of the Beauty Alliance would have a high chance of breaking through to the mortal evolution state and ascending before Yi Chun completed the Three Kingdoms novice area plan. At first glance, this didn't seem like much. After all, the female players of the Beauty Alliance all wanted to become Yi Chun's women. They even signed a slave contract with Yi Chun and swore to follow Yi Chun until death. Even if they ascended, it wouldn't affect Yi Chun at all. However, the reality was that it would affect him. This was because the first player to ascend to the ancient world would definitely receive a huge reward. This was something that Yi Chun, who had been reborn, had heard with his own ears in his previous life. To be more precise, in Yi Chun's previous life, he had personally heard the world announcement about the first player to ascend to the great desolate world receiving a vast amount of rewards. Hence, Yi Chun knew very well what it meant to be the first to ascend to the ancient world. Hence, Yi Chun would never allow the female players of the Beauty Alliance to ascend to the ancient world before him and become the first player to ascend to the ancient world. Whether it was selfishness or self-interest, Yi Chun didn't want to let someone else take away the reward that was so easily obtainable. Even if that person was a female player of the Beauty Alliance, it wouldn't do. In fact, this had nothing to do with selfishness. One must know that the Beauty Alliance's current potential was all brought by Yi Chun. Without Yi Chun, the female players of the Beauty Alliance wouldn't even be able to survive in this cruel world, let alone ascend to the ancient world. Hence, Yi Chun's request to the female players of the Beauty Alliance wasn't excessive. As soon as Yi Chun finished his words, Hu Xiaoye and the little lowly beside her, they bowed and loudly. Master! Master! In the past, neither Beauty's Alliance nor other players would have known what ascension meant. But now, apart from Beauty's Alliance, the other players still didn't know what ascension was. This was because Yi Chun had only told the Beauty Alliance about ascending to the ancient world a few times. Now, he was even more explicit about ascending to the ancient world. Hence, Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng now knew what ascending to the ancient world meant and how to ascend to the ancient world. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Hu Xiaoye, Meng Meng, and the other female players of the Beauty Alliance wouldn't disobey Yi Chun's orders, and they wouldn't be dissatisfied with Yi Chun because of this. The reason was simple. All the female players of the Beauty Alliance only had Yi Chun in their hearts, and they were willing to give up everything for Yi Chun. Otherwise, they wouldn't have agreed to Yi Chun's request so easily and signed the slave contract, and they wouldn't have resentment without enmity. Moreover, the female players of the Beauty Alliance were very clear about one thing. Everything they had now was given to them by Yi Chun. Hence, no matter what Yi Chun ordered, they would carry it out without hesitation. They wouldn't disobey, and they wouldn't be dissatisfied. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "That's right. Let's go back." "Yes, master." Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng bowed to Yi Chun in unison. Although they wanted to stay with Yi Chun for a while longer, they knew that Yi Chun had a lot of things to do. They also knew that they couldn't pester him endlessly. Otherwise, they would make Yi Chun unhappy. This wasn't an outcome that they or any of the female players of the Beauty Alliance wanted to see. Yi Chun nodded at Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng's words, then walked straight to the back of the mansion. The maid who followed Yi Chun here saw this, and hurriedly followed Yi Chun to the back of the mansion. Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng looked at each other and then reluctantly walked toward the gates of the city lord's mansion. At the gates of the city lord's mansion, as soon as Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng appeared, Li Mengyao, who didn't know if she should re-enter the city lord's mansion, suddenly spoke. "Xiaoye, Meng Meng, does master have any orders?" Hu Xiaoye and Meng Meng left the city lord's mansion because Yi Chun didn't ask them to stay. Li Mengyao naturally saw this. Although somewhat disappointed, Li Mengyao still hoped that her master, Yi Chun, would issue some quests or orders. because only then would she have an excuse to re-enter the City Lord's mansion and meet Yi-chun. In the end, she would have the opportunity to stay with Yi-chun. Even if this opportunity could only last for a pitiful few minutes, it didn't matter. This idea was very childish, very brainless, and very pitiful, but it was the truth. Moreover, it was what all the female players of the Beauty Alliance thought. As soon as Li Mengyao finished speaking, Hu Xiaoya nodded. When Li Mengyao saw this, her eyes lit up. At this moment, Meng Meng, who was next to Hu Xiaoya, spoke. Sister Yao Yao, Master told all of us that after reaching the mortal evolution state, we can't choose to ascend. Also, Master told us to work hard in cultivation. After we ascend, we have to search for treasures to improve Master's bone structure. When Li Mengyao heard this, she was taken aback. Then, she saw a flash of disappointment in her eyes. Of course, this didn't mean that Li Mengyao wanted to disobey Yi Chen's orders. She just realized that Yi Chen's new orders wouldn't give her a chance to get close to Yi Chen. Just as Li Mengyao's eyes flashed with disappointment, Hu Xiaoya suddenly spoke. Sister Yao Yao, we've all received Master's culinary inheritance. We all have culinary skills. Hearing this, Li Mengyao's disappointed expression immediately glowed. Yes, how could I forget about this? After Li Mengyao finished speaking, she took a deep look at the City Lord's mansion and said seriously, Xiaoya, Meng, let's go back. We'll go online and find Master and Scylla. At the same time, let's get our sisters to search for ingredients. Chapter 1065. When Hu Xiaoya and Meng Meng heard Li Mengyao's words, they looked at each other and nodded in unison. Okay. In fact, Li Mengyao was not the only one who wanted to use cooking to get close to Yi Chen. Hu Xiaoya and Meng Meng also had the same idea. Otherwise, Hu Xiaoya would not have directly reminded Li Mengyao that they had now received Yi Chen's cooking inheritance after seeing Li Mengyao's disappointed expression. City Lord's mansion, back residence. After Yi Chen arrived here, he stayed with Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, the five sisters Philos Aureus, Big and Small Xiao, and Empress Hari for a while before heading straight to the City Lord's mansion's main hall. What Yi Chen wanted to do was naturally to return to the game world. The matters in the real world had been dealt with. Naturally, Yi Chen would not continue to waste time in the real world, let alone waste time on romance. For Yi Chen, completing the Three Kingdoms Novice Area plan was the most important thing at the moment. City Lord's Mansion's main hall. After arriving here, Yi Chen glanced at the empty hall and then went straight to the diamond-level game cabin. At this moment, Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, Treasure Hunting Fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden monkey who had transformed into Big and Small Lolas and evolved into a divine beast, the turtle, and the royal member of the Starry Sky Sword Dragon clan, the Black Empress, female, were all in the back residence to accompany the girls. For them, Samsara City had been deserted for a long time. Although Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, and Mi Zhen would come to Samsara City from time to time for the game world, the girls would eventually return to the game world and would not stay in the real world for too long. Therefore, most of the time, they were very bored. Now, Reincarnation City was bustling with activity. Their mistress and a large number of maids had arrived and would be living in Reincarnation City from now on. Whether it was the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, the Treasure Hunter Fish Yi Xiaoyu, the Big and Little Lolas, or the Black Emperor, they were all happy from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, they did not receive any orders from Yi Chen and ran over spontaneously. Of course, they were doing this to please Yi Chen and Yi Chen's women. After all, they were all Yi Chen's spiritual pets. If they could please Yi Chen and Yi Chen's women, they would also benefit from it. It had nothing to do with utilitarianism, but was the instinct of all the pets. Arriving at the side of the diamond-ranked gaming chamber, Yi Chen stepped inside and laid down inside. With a creak, the door of the diamond-level game capsule closed instantly. At the same time, Yi Chen closed his eyes. In the game world, above the ruins of the capital of Scylla country, in the hall of the City Lord Mansion of Reincarnation Immortal City, a pillar of light suddenly descended. Then, Yi Chun, who had gone offline, appeared here. "Greetings, my lord." The uniform greeting instantly sounded with Yi Chun's appearance. When Yi Chun heard this, he immediately opened his eyes and looked at his subordinates in the hall who were divided into two rows. At this moment, the world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully advancing to Supreme Culinary. Special reward to player Yi Chun. Innate attribute points x3, 000, purple coins x1, 000,000. The world announcement was repeated 3 times in a row, instantly causing the entire world channel to explode. Damn, no way, Supreme Culinary? A chef can also become a Supreme Culinary? Are you stupid? Didn't you hear the world announcement? Isn't this already very obvious? Damn, can someone tell me why this is? How can a chef's cooking skills be on the world announcement? Damn, does this even need to be said? It must be because Yi Yu of Gojoseon's cooking skills have reached a level that can shock the heavens and make ghosts and gods cry. Otherwise, why would there be a world announcement? I dare say that Yi Yu of Gojoseon's title is definitely very awesome. Unfortunately, there is no one in this world who can make Yi Yu of Gojoseon cook. Well, except for Yi Yu of Gojoseon's wives. It would be strange if it wasn't awesome. Otherwise, how could Yi Yu of Gojoseon be rewarded with 3,000 innate attribute points? Because of Yi Chin's world announcement, the world channel was constantly flooded with comments. Just as the players were discussing, the world announcement sounded again. Ding! Congratulations to player Li Mengyao, the first person to advance to the God of Cooking. Special reward to player Li Mengyao. Innate attribute points x 300, gold coins x1, 000,000. Ding! Congratulations to player Hu Xiaoya, the second person to advance to the God of Cooking. Special reward to player Hu Xiaoya. Innate attribute points x 200, gold coins x1, 000,000. Ding! Congratulations to player Wang Mingming, the third person to advance to the God of Cooking. Special reward to player Wang Mingming. Innate attribute points x100, gold coins x1, 000,000. The world announcement was repeated 3 times, instantly causing the originally lively world channel to quiet down. However, the entire world channel was immediately filled with excitement again. Damn, are you kidding me? I can understand Yi Yu of Gojoseon becoming the supreme chef. After all, Yi Yu of Gojoseon has always been the leader among the players. But how did Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoya, and Wang Mingming become the God of Cooking? Moreover, they became the God of Cooking together. It doesn't make sense. Idiot, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? Don't you know that these 3 are the alliance leaders of the Beauty Alliance? Mother Kerr, how can I not know? Do I need you to blindly compare me? Idiot, if you know, then why did you ask? Mother of Kerr, let me ask you, what's the relationship between the Beauty Alliance and Yi Yu of Gojoseon? Do you think I'm stupid? Mother of Kerr, the Beauty Alliance belongs to Yi Yu of Gojoseon. Don't dig a hole for me and make me offend Yi Yu of Gojoseon. I said you're stupid, and you're really stupid. If I dug a hole for you, do you think Yi Yu of Gojoseon would let me go? All right, brother, stop teasing him. Let me tell him. Listen up. Yi Yu of Gojoseon can become the Supreme Culinary, the alliance leaders of the Beauty Alliance, and the God of Cooking. It's obvious that Yi Yu of Gojoseon helped the 3 of them become the God of Cooking. But that shouldn't be the case. This is cooking. It's impossible to master it all at once. It requires enough talent, enough practice, and the guidance of a famous teacher. Only then can one learn good cooking skills. It took me 5 years to become a 5-star chef before the game started. Mother Kerr, I said you're stupid, and you really are stupid. Do you know what a game is? Do you know how awesome Yi Yu of Gojoseon is? Do you know what a legacy is? This isn't fair. It's not fair. Cooking skills are accumulated bit by bit. How can you master it all at once? And it's the kind that makes you invincible. Idiot, I think you're complaining because you didn't get the God of Cooking title and the Supreme Culinary title. Of course. Don't forget what he said before. He's a 5-star chef. Hee, you're jealous, right? In front of Boss Yi-chun, you can only be like this. The World Channel was in an uproar. Yi-chun glanced at it and curled his lips in disdain. These people who are protecting me are really mixed up with the honest folk. There are all kinds of people. It was no wonder that Yi-chun thought this way. After all, Yi-chun, who was in the tribulation passing stage, could easily remember anyone, anything, and anything he saw in the past. Among these people who were insulting the 5-star chef for Yi-chun, there were people who mocked Yi-chun because of the world announcements. They even tried to persuade Yi-chun to reveal the secrets of the game for the sake of the human race and the Eastern players. And now, these people were all defending Yi-chun. How could Yi-chun be happy because of this? It seemed that those hidden forces still had evil intentions. They still wanted to make me proud because of the compliments and then deal with the monster race in the real world. Just wait. Just wait patiently. In just a few days, these bastards will be crying. This time, when Yi-chun returned to the real world, he had already noticed that the monster race that had been cleaned up had regained their strength. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the monster race players to continue hiding and not attack the human players. To be more precise, the monster race players who had regained their strength would definitely launch a large-scale attack on the cities built by the players in the real world. And these cities that were being attacked were the lairs of the hidden forces, which were the easiest to provoke the monster race players. As for the reason, it was very simple. The population in the cities built by the hidden forces was much higher than that of the ordinary forces. This kind of situation also led to a fact. That was, the blood in the cities built by the hidden forces was much thicker than the blood in the cities of the ordinary forces. And the monster race players liked cities that were rich in blood the most. Therefore, whenever the monster race players attacked the territory of the human players, they would usually attack the hidden forces first. Regardless of whether or not to attack, this was a fact that existed. And this was also the reason why the hidden forces wanted to borrow Yi-chun's hand to destroy the monster race. After all, Yi-chun was the only one who could easily deal with the monster race players. Other than Yi-chun, no one else could do this. Thinking of this, Yi-chun looked straight at his subordinates in the hall and then shouted, "Prepare to set off. Prepare to attack the Empire of the Southeast." Chapter 1066. Yes, my lord. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, the military generals, Guo Jia, Peng Tong, Jia Su, and the civil officials stood up and bowed to Yi-chun. After they finished speaking, they left the main hall of the Castellan's mansion. The military generals went out, while Guo Jia went to the front yard of the Castellan's mansion and pointed at the sky. A map of the area within 1,000 miles of the reincarnation immortal city appeared in the air. Yi-chun nodded in satisfaction when he saw the map. He walked toward Guo Jia, Peng Tong, Jia Su, Tian Feng, and Chun Kun and said, "Pay attention to the battlefield. Although the Empire of Southeast Asia is built by many small countries and is not very powerful, it is not to be underestimated. In Yi-chun's previous life, the Empire of Southeast Asia had attacked the Great Han Empire with the allied forces of many countries. They had killed many Eastern players and civilians of the Great Han Empire. Fortunately, the allied forces of the allied forces were defeated by the combined forces of the Eastern players and the natives of the three countries. Otherwise, the Great Han Empire in Yi-chun's previous life would have been destroyed by the allied forces of many countries. Of course, this was just a hypothesis. The truth was that the allied forces were defeated. Although the Eastern players paid a great price, they managed to protect the Great Han Empire. After that, the Eastern players formed a defense force of tens of millions to destroy the Empire of Southeast Asia for revenge. However, the allied forces of the Empire of Southeast Asia returned with their corpses intact. To be more precise, the army of players who were preparing to strike back at the Empire of the Southeast continent were all killed without exception. Moreover, they were all killed in the real world and in the game world. At that time, this caused quite a stir. However, After the players tried to find out the reason, they were all killed. No one tried to find out the reason until Yi Chen's rebirth. It was still a mystery how the Empire of Southeast Asia managed to kill so many Eastern players in the game world. To be more precise, there were many guesses, but no one tried to find out the truth. This was because no one wanted to lose their lives for no reason. The reason was that simple. Moreover, the Empire of Southeast Asia's method of killing people in the game world could not be brought out of the Empire of Southeast Asia, so there was nothing to be concerned about. And now, Yi Chen was preparing to attack the Empire of the Southeast continent. Naturally, he couldn't let his guard down just because he was strong. Of course, Yi Chen would not be afraid because of this. Although Yi Chen still did not know how the Empire of Southeast Asia managed to kill tens of millions of Eastern players in his previous life, Yi Chen was not worried that the Empire of Southeast Asia would use their strange attack ability that could not be brought out of the Empire of Southeast Asia. To be more precise, if the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not use that ability, Yi Chen would have his army wipe out the Empire of Southeast Asia in one fell swoop. If the Empire of Southeast Asia used the strange attack ability that Yi Chen had in his previous life, Yi Chen would not hesitate to attack and destroy it completely. This was not some mysterious confidence, but a fact, because Yi Chen did have such an ability, and he also had such a method. One must know that Yi Chen was now at the peak of the crossing calamity stage. With such a stage, Yi Chen had the ability to crush the entire world. If Yi Chen had innate spiritual treasures, innate ultimate treasures, and Yi Chen's various powerful abilities, the strange attack ability of the Empire of Southeast Asia would not be able to withstand Yi Chen's attack, let alone hurt the army of Reincarnation Immortal City under Yi Chen's protection. As soon as Yi Chen finished his words, Gui Jia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, Tian Feng, and Chen Kun's faces turned solemn. They bowed in unison and saluted loudly. Yes, my lord. Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, Tian Feng, and Chen Kun were all strategists. They each had their own outstanding abilities, so they could help Yi Chen make up for some of his omissions. For example, when Yi Chen attacked Tagimu City, the border city of the Polar Bear Empire, it was Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, Tian Feng, and Chen Kun who discovered that something was amiss, which eventually led Yi Chen to the godly soul idol. If it weren't for Guojia, Jia Su, and the others, Yi Chen might have suffered heavy casualties in that battle. Furthermore, it would have been a large-scale casualty. After all, the godly soul idol was too domineering. It was not something that Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, or the soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City could withstand. That was why Yi Chen had specifically instructed Guojia, Jia Su, Chen Kun, Tian Feng, and Pang Tong not to let their guard down just because the Empire of Southeast Asia was a barbaric and backward country. They had to observe the battlefield closely. Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction after hearing Guojia, Tian Feng, Chen Kun, Jia Su, and Pang Tong's words. He then rose into the air and flew toward the drill ground. In the drill ground of Reincarnation Immortal City, banners fluttered in the wind, and spears lined up like a forest. The 41 million soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City were divided into hundreds of square formations and lined up neatly in the drill ground. As soon as Yi Chen arrived, the 41 million soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City dropped to one knee and shouted in unison.